Welcome. Thanks for coming, guys. Let's talk about value stream mapping. I wanted to find out first what your background was in this before I get too far, just so I have a little bit better understanding of kind of where you're coming from, and I can adjust my detail as we go along here. But this will be the agenda for today, and then we'll do some quick introductions. So we just want to talk about value stream mapping itself, what it is, what are the benefits of doing one, and then we'll get into breaking down the map into different elements. And we'll go through a really simple exercise looking at a video and trying to put that into a value stream map format. Then we'll talk through the different steps you go through an exercise to create a value stream map. And then talk about some of the symbols that go along with that, and then see what other questions and things that come up. It'd be nice that you guys are all from the same company so you can talk about specifically, and if we have time we can actually go through and start to sketch out something so it's kind of connects to directly to the type of work you guys are doing, so customize that directly to your work. So real quick, I'm Brian Hurley. My background is in Lean and Six Sigma, of course. I spent 18 years at an aerospace company doing the same kind of work, and this last couple months I've been doing full-time with BPI, so that's my consulting company. And I'm really focusing on sustainable businesses and working with some nonprofits through a group called Lean Portland. So we have a volunteer group. That's how I met Doreen. And we work with like Rebuilding Center and Free Geek and Oregon Entrepreneurs Network. And we just help them, teach them basic Lean concepts and tools and help them with a project. So that's an opportunity. You guys are a nonprofit as well, so there's an opportunity that we can get some help from our Lean Portland team to help out with some of the activity, or at least provide some training and things like that. What else? So yeah, so most of my background was in Six Sigma. I started in statistics and then moved into a quality role at Rockwell Collins, and then they were going through a Lean initiative that was kind of pushed on them by Boeing. That's one of their largest customers, who was going through its own Lean transformation as well. And so through that work, I kind of got slowly pulled into the Lean activity because there's a lot of commonality and overlap with those two initiatives. And so kind of brought in a lot of Six Sigma into the Lean program, and then had kind of a blended approach that we took forward. And then I worked at a couple different facilities, one in Florida and one here at Wilsonville, that I was kind of the primary Lean Six Sigma contact. So I did the training and managed the projects and worked with the leadership on these initiatives. So I've seen a lot of different situations and used a lot of the different tools. And so I just set up these workshops just to kind of feel what knowledge people had and what interest they had in certain tools. And that's kind of how I'm gauging what people need, actually. So just been throwing out these different ideas. So probably early next year I'll redo the whole workshop series I set up, which is basically hitting up on all the key tools. And I'm doing them in these 3-hour blocks of 9 to 12 or 1 to 4. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, so we won't get into a lot of the background of Lean today. It's kind of jumping into a specific tool. But there are some other workshops I can point you to that are free that give you a good overview that myself and another business, we're not a partner, but we're like a partner. So we work together a lot. Him and I teach a workshop. And so I'll send you some information on that. You can see if that's interesting to you. If you want more history and kind of background on the concepts and principles. So we'll kind of jump into a specific key tool of Lean, but I'll touch on some of those things as we go along here. Okay, so let's start off. Obviously, VSM is the acronym for Value Stream Map, and it's really that to try to figure out what is the stream of value as it goes through an organization. And one of the key things that's really unique about Value Stream Map is that it ties the customer through the loop at the beginning and at the end. They ask for something, they want something, they need help from you and your organization. How long does it take to go through your system before they get what they need? And sometimes we look at our own individual processes and what our piece of the puzzle is to the overall, The value stream map looks at it from a system perspective. And that's where we're trying to optimize. We're not trying to optimize billing. We're not trying to optimize the doctor's time. We're trying to actually optimize the flow for the customer or the patient. And when you look at it, value stream map allows you to see where the value is created and how long it takes to go through there. So we'll break out those elements in here. And it also brings in this idea around the information flow. How does information get handed off and passed off and communicated through the different departments and different processes? So we'll show you where that fits into the map. So the customer requests a product or service from your organization, and then they get that product or service. And we're mapping out the timeline of how long that takes. And usually what you'll find is that the time from when they asked for it and when they got it is a lot longer than the time it actually takes to do the work to get that information or that provide that service to them. So, and it's usually a fraction of the time. When you include a 24-hour cycle and clock and weekends and stuff, you start realizing that what takes 2 hours of labor in your organization takes 2 weeks in the patient's eyes and what they experience. And so one of the first things you'll do with the value stream map is try to chop that time down and say, why does the patient get hung up along that process, and how can we break those barriers so they don't get hung up? And once we start working with somebody, how do we get them through the system with highest quality, but quickly as well? Because the more we have in process, the more we get hung up on things. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Usually this is conducted in an event format, 3 to 5 days. It could be as short as half a day and breaking up into multiple days, but usually to get the full experience, it's going to be a multiple day session. And so you could either kind of rip the Band-Aid off and do it all at once, or you could try to piecemeal it together over some half-day sessions. But the idea is that, and we'll talk about this in the process, why it takes that many days to go through it. So just doing a map doesn't take multiple days. It's the activity to get to an action plan that people will buy into and can go execute on. That's where the extra days take time. So the map and everything with process improvement, the tools are there not to, the goal is not to make the tools or to use the tools. The tools are the catalyst or the template that rallies the team together around whatever issue they're looking at. And so tools are there to supplement the discussions and the dialogue and the observations and the data analysis that goes on in the process. So you can make a map very quickly and you can do it in your desk, but that doesn't accomplish the goal of building a team around the system and the value stream and making everybody understand what the customer experience looks like. So, yeah.
Do you have any advice for working with teams that are struggling because they feel like they have so much to do and they don't have time to do something like this? And
yeah, it's a challenge. Getting over that first hump of
to train them on a tool that you're going to be using, etc.
Yeah.
Any sage advice?
So the training, I like to do that just in time. That's a lean concept too, is not way in advance so they forget the information, but we would have a value stream map training session scheduled, and there'd be training like this at the beginning of the session. But more of it would be, here's the overview, we're not going to get into all the details, you're going to learn it as we go through this exercise. So try to time up the training with just in time with when they're actually going to apply the tool, and then they're really going to learn it best as we're going through. But they got a high level understanding of what we're doing, so where we're headed. But that's where the learning is going to take place when we start putting a map to their process and what they are familiar with. So some people get really, basically provide way too much training up front, and then there's no application to it, and then that knowledge, you lose that knowledge very quickly. The getting over the hump of how do I carve out time when I'm already buried and busy, it's kind of the analogy of like sharpening the axe. It's like I got this dull axe and I'm cutting down a tree, and at some point, if I just stop and sharpen the axe, I can go a lot faster. And so, but if I just keep hacking away at it with a dull blade, it's going to take me longer and it'll be worn out. So that analogy of at some point we have to take the time and invest into this to move forward and actually improve the process. But that's very difficult, and I don't have a perfect solution for that. But it's just that commitment that says we're going to start to carve out time to do improvements. And even though, because we're never going to be done with actions, we're never going to run out of problems. That's always going to be there. So what we can do is start to say every Friday afternoon we're going to carve out 2 hours, and we're not going to fight fires, and we're going to do improvement work. You can do something like that to start moving in that direction. But yeah, that first initial hump is very difficult. Another approach could be is you start working on some very simple improvements in their own area. I have another workshop called Personal Lean, where just people look for things that they do that's not really connected to other processes, but I'm wasting time going to the printer a lot. I keep losing my pens, or I keep losing things. How can I get more organized by myself and save a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there? That will eventually add up to some free time that I can now breathe or I'm going to spend an hour training somebody who can be my backup when I get overloaded, and then that can give me some protection so I can go spend a 4-hour session somewhere. So yeah, at some point someone has to just kind of decide that this is important. I'm going to make the time for it initially, because it is hard to carve that time out. And then once you get some success there, then that frees you up to continue that effort, or get to the stuff that you haven't been able to get to. I don't know, do you guys have other thoughts? Or
I guess the one other thing I've seen is that once you have a win, it can help convince people to do that. So if you can find an area that's more willing to go along with it, and then show like, wow, look what their outcome was, it helps people understand that maybe they want to do that too. That's what I found. That's why I've always been a big fan of pilots. Especially you get those people that are really into pilots, and they'll pilot with you, and then you think you have something you can go out and sell to everybody else.
Success stories somewhere. Yeah, because they want to know that I'm going to give up time, and I want to know that I'm going to get that time back at some point. And so seeing that there's success already somewhere else in my own organization, I can read all these case studies from other companies, but where I see it in my own company and organization, that helps them have more confidence that it is going to be a worthwhile investment. So this is the format of what a value stream map looks like. And so the section up here, let me just kind of walk through here. This is the customer at the far right, and it's got these little triangle shapes on the top. It's supposed to look like a factory, because that's where a lot of the stuff gets started in factories and manufacturing companies. But the concepts are applicable to any type of organization. It just is starting to migrate and move into other non-manufacturing environments. So we have a customer over here. Then there's some signal, either manually, like through a straight line, like none of this has it on there, but if it's a straight line, that means there's manual information that's being passed on, or I'm telling you, or I'm giving you a piece of paper. And then a jagged line like that means there's an electronic communication, there's an email or a database update or something that triggers that the customer wants something, they need something. And it goes into some kind of system. That could be production control, it could just be your health record system. Whatever that system is, information is going in there from the customer that starts the process. And then there's communications that go out from that system to different parts of the process. And that's the information flow that you want to capture, and that can be done on a weekly basis, a daily basis. And sometimes that information flows back, that process updates the system with information and updates with what's happening. So that could be a double-ended arrow back and forth. Sometimes there's more of a push of information out, and there's nothing that comes back to the system about what's going on. So that's how you can communicate the information flow at the top. The material flow is then actually the value stream and the steps. So this would be 4 different major steps that it goes through. And with a value stream map, you want to keep it very high level, because the goal is to identify areas where we're going to deep dive into. We don't want to deep dive into all the areas starting off. It's just overwhelming. So If you're getting more than 10 or 12 process steps on here, it's probably too detailed. So try to keep it to that level. And that means you're going to have within one of those steps, there's going to be a lot of details and a lot of activity going on. But first, this is looking at the system, and we're trying to understand where is the opportunities in the whole system. Then we'll go in and dig into these one or two problem areas. But let's not deep dive until we see that there's a need to go deep dive in that area at this time. We will find plenty of opportunities throughout all the processes. It's just trying to highlight the areas that are the most troubling or most opportunity. So that will be the material flow of the steps that the patient, maybe in your guys' case, or documents flow through the system in an office type process, or in manufacturing processes where how the parts flow through. So whatever that value you guys provide to your customers, that's what's going to flow through there. And we're going to take the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, what happens? If you get worried about, well, this one time, this one thing happened, and then, oh, it could, in some rare cases, it could do this or that. We're just trying to say, what happens most of the time? The majority of the time, what does that look like? And let's just capture the major things.
So Brian, one of the questions I have, and this is later, David, but one of the problems I have when I try to draw a map is that there's like a fork in the process. And so, and I haven't seen a lot of examples that show that, so that's where I get a little stuck.
Yeah. I have some people put a fork in the process.
So you would just kind of make a fork?
You would have like a separate one, maybe, and then if it comes back together, that's okay too. If it diverges completely, you can have a separate map.
I think in the ones I have, because we were looking at flowing out the flow of our tickets, which are like our claims through the system, and you review it, and then it's more than 20% of the time it has some problem. The other time it's clean, and so you just kind of fork it off. Is that what you'd say? Because it does come back together at some point.
Okay, if it's like a rework step or some non-value added step to fix a problem.
It's typically non-value.
Okay, then I would just put it as I would put a yield number in there, like 74% yield. And then I wouldn't put in the rework. You just know that there's going to be rework activity that happens. And then if this is the big area, then I might get down into a process map detail of mapping out what the rework loop looks like. But I would just highlight that we have, the yield is poor in that area, but I wouldn't spike it out in the map. Unless it's going through a tremendous amount of extra work and there's a high percentage of stuff that's going on there. I guess in the big system,
that's pretty much what we're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could do it either way, either do a fork or do a separate process map, but the yield's a great idea.
Yeah. And then you just highlight as a verse that we have poor yield in this area, and that's one of our opportunities to go dig into that reasons and why that's happening, and maybe capture all the waste that takes place to deal with those failures in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so those are the steps, and then underneath there is called a data box. So usually what we'll put is the name of the step and then a little description of what that is. This doesn't have the description on there, but sometimes the names aren't quite as clear, or there's not a fine separation point between the steps. So you just want to document what that means, like a sentence or so about what goes on in that step. Just so people could read it and say, is my step in this one or this one? And they can read, oh, I'm in this one. From the time that this shows up to when we send it out to here. That would be like a little descriptor in there. And then the data boxes would be information about what goes on in this process. What are the high-level metrics and data we can summarize the process around. And so this one is around cycle time. This is change over time. So when I switch from one patient to another, or one part to another, or switch and go to a different type of document, how long does it take me to switch to the next type? This could be uptime, could be another metric to use, like how much of the time is the system available for us to get into and use. Yield would be another number you put in there. If you have, we also put inventory. That shows up as data, but it's sometimes documented outside of the box. And that would be how much inventory is waiting to go into this process at this point in time. So if that's patients, how many patients are waiting to get into this first step? On average, or typically, or right now, what are we observing? And so you document where the inventory is backed up.
So like your backlog.
Backlog,
Backlog,
basically,
sorry,
yep.
Put in a non-manufacturing word.
Yeah. And then so here would be, now, here's the ones that have processed through this first step. How many are now waiting to get into the second step?
Where do you put the backlog again? Do you just
Like
make a notation?
right before the step, yeah. So this would be like I would be the inventory symbol, and then you just write in. This could be people, or this could be number of requests or orders or cases, whatever you have, whatever flows through there. You're just documenting that. Or they've got it in terms of days, like how many. That's actually they don't have the actual inventory listed on there. So I've seen it also, they just put the inventory into the data box itself, but sometimes I've seen it listed underneath, so I like it underneath. And this is just how long a day, so I'll get to that here in a second. So other metrics under there would be number of people, and that's listed here. How many people work in that area? If you have any costs that you can tie to that, you can put those in there. The metrics are pretty open. I mean, you can decide what metrics are important. The goal is to highlight the opportunities. So if you have occupancy rates, or if you have staff availability, if those are issues, then you want to capture those as metrics in there and show, or maybe it's absenteeism from the employees, or it's overtime percentage, or anything that you think will help identify or highlight a problem or an opportunity, then we want to put that in the data box. So there's some generic ones that I'll show you on the symbols sheet, but you want to make it match and be relative to the type of work you're doing. Sometimes in an office, transactional type environment, it might be the percentage of time I get complete and accurate information from the prior step. So if they send me a form, how many times, what percentage of the time is it filled out properly with all the right information? And those can be some pretty alarming statistics when you start looking at that, how poor that is. So that's a very common metric and we need to look at on this type processes. Kind of like a yield of that. So that's the data box, and then the last piece is called a timeline. What we're doing is we're capturing the total time it takes to go through this whole process. So it's this wait time up front of the process. So something comes into the area and it's ready to go into that. How long does it take before you actually start working on that? So let's say a patient arrives in this area, and how long do they wait before they're actually get started into this process? And then the bottom number is how long it actually takes to go through that process once you start it. Or it's the value added part of this, right? The actual important work that's being done. So this would be the lead time, and this is actually like the cycle time. And what we see is there's usually a big discrepancy, that the time it takes, the waiting time is much longer than what the actual time to do the task is. And so as we look at each of these steps, you start to add up the time on the top versus the time on the bottom, and you start seeing these big discrepancies between how long does it actually take versus how long people are waiting to get through that process. So this number is always going to be larger than this bottom number because it includes that number. So this number is the wait time plus the cycle time. I'll show you that in the next slide. But what we end up with is a total lead time, and then we have value added time, which is the bottom. So they're basically adding up all the top row, and then adding up the bottom rows, and that's going to be your ratio of value added time to total time. So for this particular process, it takes 68 days to get through the system from the time the customer asks for that item before they get that particular item. But it only takes 15 minutes of time, actual value added time to actually do that one request. And the reason is because there's probably a lot of work waiting in between the processes for various reasons. And we'll talk about that. So let me break down this timeline a little bit better. So on the upper part of the bar, the box, you have a lead time. And I've even seen it broken out into the cycle time, and then another level down where they've broken out. One of the cycle time is actually value added time. So in the lean overview, we talk about value-added time being stuff where you're actually improving or enhancing the item that you're processing, whether it's a document or a patient or a part. It's actually gaining value with the work that you're doing to it. So I could be spending time with a patient and provide zero value. Or I could be spending the time, and all the time I could be providing value to them. So some people on this bottom rung, it's either I can get cycle time, but I don't have a good idea how to break out how much of that time is actually valuable. And in some places I've seen they actually have broken out what's valuable, and so they put another number below that. And that's always going to be like less than the cycle time. So we'll talk about it a little bit more as I go through one of the exercises. But there is often a big difference between how long it actually takes to do the task and how much of that time is actually value added or not. So that's a process. We have a lead time and a cycle time or a value added time, depending on how detailed you got it. And so you might have something like 38 minutes there, 30 minutes of actual time, so it waits 8 minutes prior to that process basically because there's a gap of about 8 minutes between there. And 10 minutes of that 30 minutes is actually value added, so there's 20 minutes of non-value added time, or whatever you call wasteful time in there. So that's sometimes how I see it written, but often this isn't available, so we just have 38 and 30 in the bottom. So how that looks is, let's break out this 30 minutes here. So there's a 38 total minutes that it showed up into that area in that process 38 minutes ago, and then at the end it leaves the area 38 minutes later. So the first 8 minutes is sitting there waiting to be processed. And I'll put that in red because that's not adding any value to the process, right? It's just time that's elapsing. Then maybe they load up a software program that takes 4 minutes to load up and get logged in and get to the screen I want. And then I'm looking over the paperwork and I'm looking for typos and I print out the file and I go get it from the printer and I fill out my piece of the paperwork, but it's not adding value to the customer, it's just internal paperwork things that I have to fill out. So I'm going to put that as yellow, as it's time that we're spending on this that's probably not value added, maybe necessary for our own internal record keeping. Then I get down here and I actually review the changes that came through this design, and I actually make a decision and submit it to the next process. And so I'm going to say that that is value added time. That's what the process was set up to do. And so when I look at that time, I find there's only really 10 minutes of that time that's valuable. Whereas the total time, once I started looking at this document, it took me 30 minutes to complete it. And it waited 8 minutes. So it waited 8 minutes, then I took 30 minutes to do this, but only the last 10 minutes was actually considered valuable. So that's how we get this down here. 38 minutes of total wait time throughout the whole thing. 30 minutes of that time was cycle time, and only 10 minutes of that would be considered value-added time. So if you can get to that level of detail, then you can break these out. But like I said, this doesn't always, that's not the first thing you might have that breakout of. Because to figure this stuff out takes some time and an observation.
So that could be like the second go-round.
Yeah, I would say that's usually the second, third go-round before you get into that type of detail. But just want to highlight that sometimes you'll see these types of things, or the numbers below the line here as the value-added time. So if you see two numbers there, just know that it could be a cycle time versus value-added time. It's technically supposed to be this 10 minutes listed there, but a lot of times to get to that detail takes time. So just be sure make sure you know what that number represents in the map. Okay, so that makes sense in terms of how we look at this whole time. So remember, this lead time is what the customer feels. They have no idea what's going on in here most of the time, unless they're directly involved in that. All they see is it took 40 minutes to get through that process, and a series of processes it adds up, and all I see is I put a request in, and then some later amount of time, I got what I wanted. The idea is that it should only take as much as the value added time takes to go through each of those steps. in a perfect world. So if it only takes 10 minutes to get there, the total lead time should also be 10 minutes. That'd be a perfect world.
How would you do if, I'm thinking of that scenario, she has a process, really to get to the value involves feedback from an external place
Yep.
that has really crazy non-value added time.
Yep.
And so would you build that into the flow, or would you have like a pre and post flow, or how would you do that?
Yeah, you could have that spiked out, or you could, yeah, probably have like an extra box and call that a supplier or a,
Okay.
third party or something like that, and try to capture metrics around how long does it take to get a response, how many are waiting right now for that. So treat it like a process step, even though you don't have control over that.
Okay.
But then you can at least highlight that, is that the big bottleneck in the whole system?
Yeah.
Or is it something that, yeah, it takes a while, but we end up running into bigger problems later anyways, so it doesn't, fixing that outside supplier doesn't actually speed up our whole system. There's a bigger bottleneck somewhere else.
Got it. Okay.
And then there's things you can do to work around that, and just really partnering with that organization and finding out how they're doing their work. And same internal problems as there's batching going on, there's misaligned resources, there's a lot of non-value added steps that they're doing.
I've done those steps
Yeah.
on the other side of the world, and if it takes them that long, they got a lot of non-value added
Yeah.
steps.
Right, and usually it's, there's inefficiency, they're trying to,
Oh, yeah.
each group's trying to optimize their own work, and it usually is at the expense of the turnaround time for someone else. And so it's sub-optimizing is what we call it. I'm making my job easier, but I'm holding up everybody else in the process of doing that. That happens a lot. And so the value stream map is intended to expose those issues and say, you can't do all 50 at once at the end of your day. You have to sprinkle those throughout the day so that we're not waiting a full day to get our response back. And then you have to work together to help them understand why that's important to the overall customer satisfaction. So that's one of the big things with Lean that gets people a little confused, is that sometimes the request is, I need you to be inefficient so that the system can run efficiently. And that's counterintuitive for a lot of people around Lean. But that makes my job harder. Yes, but we're not trying to make your job simple at the expense of everybody else. We're trying to make the job the best for the customer or whoever's paying. So that's a little bit of a trickiness for people around me. You can't have every process be efficient and have a system run efficiently. It doesn't work that way. Each process has to run a little inefficiently to make the system run efficiently. Any questions on that before I go on?
I can follow how everything adds up in the value stream itself on the bottom. If one were to be working on a process with a team, say with checking patients in,
Yep.
how much time it takes, patient walks up to the front desk, they check in, that's kind of like value added time, and then they sit in the waiting room, that's non-value added time, and then they get called back, sort of thing. Is it okay to just keep it super simple, and instead of just going back to that diagram, basically just see,
I might even have like a waiting room.
yeah, waiting room and so forth. Basically, all of the non-value added time goes on the top,
Yep.
and the value added time goes on the bottom, and if you're not, going back
The
to
gaps,
slide,
the gaps here. So
the
yeah,
gaps are the hard part.
this is where I'm looking for opportunities. 15
Right.
days versus 7 minutes, that's a huge gap. 10 days to 4 minutes, that's a huge gap. Some of them might be 35 minutes to 20 minutes. That's not terrible. So that's where the opportunities is those huge gaps between the lead time and the actual process. Or you can just look at it straight up and say, I'm just going to take the longest lead time at the top because that's what the customer feels. Let's just go tackle why does it take 30 days from when it shows up in that process to when it gets done. But the other way to look at it is maybe it's 20 days of value-added work, then that's not as bad as a problem as another one that had 10 days and only 10 minutes of value-added. The gap is, as a percentage, it's actually larger. So maybe I want to start in that one, even though it's not the total longest one. Because that could easily take 10 days out of that one. The other one might be tougher. So you're kind of looking at the gaps between the two, but then also looking at the overall number and using that to prioritize. And these are going to be estimates, and they're going to be averages, and they're going to be best guesses at that. The typical situation, sometimes we don't have that, we'll go out and actually try to count and measure what's going on right now and hope that that's reflective. But we'd like to have a little bit more history to say that 10 days sounds about right, and that's typical. We don't want to take some weird situation going on right now after a big, hurricane comes through, and then we're getting our inventory numbers from that day that aren't really representative of a typical situation. So we want some, and I've even put in ranges of values, 8 to 12 days, because it's not going to be exactly 10 days. Again, the idea is to point us in the right direction so we can deep dive into that one area as a follow-on to the mapping exercise.
So your 5 days in that first thing, I want to make sure I get that right, because I think that was a spot I was confused. So your 5 days is your wait time before you start, between receiving and knowing, plus the 2, in this case, only 2 minutes, so plus the 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, so this number includes this number.
Got it, so you only have to add at the top.
Yep,
timeline.
and that's why I didn't make it easy, so when you add the top, you don't have to
Yeah.
add the bottom to it
Yeah,
later.
okay, got it. That's helpful, thank you.
Okay, so the benefits of a value stream map are, it allows you to look horizontally across an organization or company. And what the traditional model is, we are set up in our org structures and hierarchies to be vertical silos. And we have a department that we work for. And our manager drives a lot of what we work on. And we try to do our job the best we can. And we hope that we're aligned with what the customer needs, but what happens is we end up sub-optimizing our work and making our jobs more efficient, but that can cause problems for the horizontal perspective across the value stream, or across those silos. We run into problems because it's now everyone's doing their own thing to make their job easier, and that ends up, the customer loses in those situations. Because no one's responsible for making sure the customer experience is efficient throughout the whole system. So it's the view that the customer has of the process, not how you view your own part of the process. And when we get everybody together and they start putting these numbers in there, it's kind of eye-opening for everyone to see how long, usually the surprise is how long it takes between processes. As a first pass through, that's usually the biggest opportunities. Why does it sit 3 days, 2 days, 4 hours, 1 hour between these processes? How can we cut that down? Because that's time the customer's waiting. And they don't know that that's sitting there on a shelf, or it's waiting in a queue somewhere, or in someone's inbox, waiting to be processed. They just know they're waiting. So this will highlight areas where the things get hung up and the flow stops. And the idea is we want to create flow. That's one of the principles around Lean. Is once I start working on something, I want it to move through my process. Even if it goes slowly, I want it to keep moving forward. Don't let it stop. Once I let it stop, it can sit there an infinitely long amount of time. So it's better for us to pick something up and finish it than to pick it up, partially work on it, and then set it down and do something else. Or process part of what the first patient needs and then send them off to the side and do something else when they're waiting. Let's just get them all the way through the system as fast as we can.
One terminology I used that helped one place I was at was, because it was horrible. They do something and then they put it for the next step and then they come back a month later and it was just super horrible. And so I started calling it do and drop. So they do it and they drop it, and do it and they drop it. And that terminology, like they couldn't get the concept of flow, but they could get the do and drop, but the opposite of flow is do and drop, do and drop. So that was just a helpful term that's kind of helped me to highlight for people what they're doing.
That's good.
So.
Sometimes it's hard to not do and drop, though, say with a referral, an external referral to specialty care. You start the referral process, you reach out, you wait for some kind of message back from the external referent or something like that. and then you pick it up again once you get a message back from them, and then you call the customer, can't call the customer, the client, and then, you know, so it's like a lot of doing and dropping, and sometimes there's a team working on that one referral, so it's kind of hard. And I can imagine that BBIS has a lot of those sorts of things, where there's a team of people working on one ticket or something like that, a team of people.
With us, it's more the, again, dropping and waiting for external. Well, not external, external to BBIS.
Yeah.
In her world, it's waiting for people outside BBIS and then waiting for people outside CCC.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard.
So I'm really curious to see yours, because I think it's going to be like half an hour processing, 90 days of waiting.
No, yeah, I'm actually sitting here thinking about a conversation I had with Sarah about looking at the timelines with the external payers, but this is making me actually look at, yes, there's the process with the payers, but there's also the process before we even get to the payers, and there's waiting within that as well. So
I
it
think
is
there's multiple opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this will help you highlight those areas and decide where do we start.
And I think that could be a tool would help internal definitely, but I'm not opposed to showing that to the payers too, especially maybe after we get our stuff looking better, and then be like, look at this, here's our part, here's your part, you know, because I think it could, you know, like I said, get that common understanding of how the process looks from our standpoint.
Right. Yep. And that's, again, the whole goal of the iStream mapping is networking with your partners, your suppliers, internal departments. It's getting everybody together and say, we're all part of a big system. Let's meet each other and talk to each other and find out what each other does, and then look at the whole system and say, here's where we're having trouble. And it's not about you're doing it wrong. It's just, let's think of a way to make it easier for our customers, who are our ultimate you know, judges about how we're doing. Let's make the process easier for them, and let's take away the reasons why you have to do your work the way that you do. And can we come up with improvement ideas that make this more streamlined? But when often people, this is the first time they'll see the whole process, and they've met people from their other departments that they've never met before. And so even if, I often say that the some of the value, even if you did nothing after this map, you just made the map and walked away, there's value there with the networking and the communications of, well, I'm having the same thing come up. I'm going to call so-and-so from that event and find out what they want me to do with this, because I know they were complaining sometimes that we would send incomplete information, and that causes all kinds of problems for them. So before I finish this, I'm going to give them a call and look. That type of stuff happens just organically after these types of events. And then they see the whole thing and they start thinking differently about flow and the customer experience, and that naturally will just get some improvements just right there. Oh, here comes one of those orders. I need to process that, get it done and out the door. Even though it takes me longer to do it one at a time as it comes in, I know I'm keeping the ball moving. I'm keeping the flow going. So that naturally you'll get some gains if nothing officially gets approved. So, but obviously we want to actually go in and make those improvements. So it helps reduce the sub-optimizing, or highlight when sub-optimizing is going on, that we can talk about and explain why it's not good to do that and what the ramifications of doing that are to the whole system. The team building networking I just talked about, and the communication improves, because now we've got everybody lined up into the process. And one of the often the outcomes that we see that works well is, going forward, we're not going to work in silos. We are going to consolidate together and co-locate each other into a smaller work area, so we can keep that communication going. So it's not going to get handed off to all the finance people in one area and all the nurses over here and the physicians over here and everybody working in their own groups. Let's look at the value stream that we're looking at, and let's get everybody in different departments together in the same area. So that's often some of the ways that we break up the silos, is to physically break up the silos. You still have your reporting structure can stay the same, but you have somebody who's kind of looking at the flow of the whole system, and saying, can we make sure that that's not breaking Let's look at a video. This is an example of one that was done actually at State of Washington. I think the Department of, well, they'll explain the name. DHSH, I think is the name of it.
This 10-minute video will give you a snapshot into a value stream map workshop. We have captured vignettes of an actual lean event, and you will hear 5 participant stories captured during their workshop week. A value stream map workshop is a multi-day event. In this case, it was 5 days, but we typically run them somewhere between 3 to 5 consecutive days. The participants are the people who do the work. They are considered the subject matter experts, and wherever possible, we seek statewide representation from the staff who are part of the process. The group size varies, sometimes as little as 5 to 7 people, and upwards to 30+ people. Participants will receive training on lean principles and are guided by a charter outlining the project scope and boundaries. The 3 products that are created by the participants is a current state map which visually describes the high-level steps of how the work is currently done, a future state map which shows how the work would be done after improvements are made, and an action plan that outlines the necessary activities to support the change from current state to future state. This is a highly collaborative and interactive workshop requiring group participation. The entire workshop is supported by trained facilitators. A key component of the workshop is that the participants own the product they produce. The participants implement the action plan. Ideally, the improvements will be completed within 90 days, and it is important that the participants understand they are committed beyond the workshop at least 90 days following. Here is what participants had to say about their week ahead.
To hear other people, really, quite frankly, from other regions, other parts of the state, talk about their process, because certainly we all share the same policy, but we all probably go about doing it a little bit differently. And so having all 3 regions and a tremendous amount of experience from each region, I'm excited about hearing how they do it and learning hopefully more efficient and better ways to do it from them too.
I'm not real thrilled about taking a whole week off of work to come down here and do this, but hey, if we can use this for intake and get some kind of a idea of how we can make it more efficient and work better for us and also for the consumers, I'm all for it.
I'm excited about this week. I am all for eliminating waste, the idea of streamlining processes and getting things done faster and without unnecessary steps. I also hope that we will come up with more consistency statewide, because with 3 regions, even though we have similar systems in place, there are very different ways of doing things.
I guess one thing I'm just, I won't say a worry, but just kind of looking at how this process is going to go over the next few days. Just kind of seeing if this is just, we're just kind of going in circles, going through the motions. Hopefully that's not the case. And it's like you said, 5 days is a long time to be away from family, number 1, away from, your work, number 2.
On Friday, I thought, why did I ever think this would be a good idea to leave my caseload for a week? So then I thought, well, if I do this for a week, then I'll know A, if it really works, and B, if it's something I want to continue putting energy into.
In the first 2 days, you will complete the current state map.
At first I came in and I was sort of skeptical, and I still have a little bit of skepticism because we're using this process to describe intake, and I'm a little concerned about, we can move an intake through faster, but we haven't really touched on the quality of it.
It's pretty nitty-gritty. It's less kind of big picture philosophical than I thought it was going to be. It's a lot of language that's specific to this process, and the facilitators speak to each other in that language, and you catch on a little bit as things are, as the days are going on, but it's a little disorienting in the beginning.
all the notes and all the information that's being jotted down, is that going to be compiled somewhere where someone's going to be able to process through? Whereas, we can go back and, and follow up later and say, okay, well, this happened this week. These were some of the suggestions. These were some of the things that possibly can or may be implemented. Then what happens next? Where's the what happens next part?
The facilitators will guide the group through a process of analyzing the map. The group is encouraged to ask why and challenge the status quo. The participants make recommendations to their peers in the room for improvements to their process. The lean process captures all participants' improvement ideas.
I have faith that we are a group of people. It's not just me, so just because I can't think of one thing, or how to improve this process, somebody else is probably going to have a good idea for that.
When I stepped back and I looked at where everybody had put in the red dots, which indicates the waste, I just kind of did a cursory scan of it. I didn't look at it in great detail, but it looked like people have been paying attention, and I was in agreement with most of those red dots. And so from my perspective, it sounds like it's going to be beneficial.
After the current state and improvement ideas are recorded, the participants will organize and discuss the merits of the improvements based upon criteria of difficulty and impact. Together, they decide which improvement ideas shall become action items to be implemented within the next 90 days. After this decision, the group may redraw the process map reflecting all improvements, which we call the future state map.
I like the fact that we were able to develop a plan here and now, identify things for implementation and things to do later, and do it right there with our participation and right in the moment. And it's not that they're going to get our participation and then put this together and send it out to us later, because you lose momentum, but instead it worked really well because they're doing it as we're talking about it, and so there's buy-in.
It was difficult to come to the agreement that we came to share some of the best practices. Everybody had to drop a little bit of their own idea of what is the right way to do it, and everybody got to contribute some of their own idea of what was the right way to do it. But that's difficult for people to do, to let go. So when we all kind of got together and decided to try the new streamlined hybrid process, I thought that was actual progress.
I think also creating new partnerships and new open lines of communication, and gaining new strategies and tools for the tool belt from other people, other program managers, other supervisors, other staff, but just a variety of different people from all the different regions, and kind of being able to utilize those and looking at what's working for them and how I can take that back to people I deal with, and give those people give my people those tools to add to their tool belt to help them do what they do better.
I don't think the three regions knew what the other regions were doing in terms of the specific detail that we went over this last week. So just knowing what the other folks are doing across the state is really, really beneficial. When we talk about how we did it before, and then we talk about what it's going to look like now. And I think whoever's in the audience, and they're going to be able to see the difference, it's a pretty amazing difference. It's much leaner. There's a lot of waste that we got rid of.
The final step of your VSM week is a report out session to the sponsor. This involves the participants presenting the current state map, the action plan, the future state, and any other relevant information that was used to inform the week's work. The report out provides the sponsor and other audience members an opportunity to ask questions and provide immediate feedback to the participants. Barring any significant obstacles, the participants leave their VSM ready to implement their action plan in the next 90 days. We hope this video offers you a glimpse into the VSM process and will prepare you for your next VSM event.
Go to half day and say, what can we do in that time? Oh, that went well, that was worth the time. Let's do another half day later. At least it's better than the small meetings infrequently that drags out. Because you spend a lot of that first meeting next week trying to remember where you left off,
Right,
and then it's
there's
different
always
people that
that.
show up, and it's very unproductive. So it's hard to break out that time, but once you can do it, you can make a lot of progress.
Yeah, I know, like, a coworker of mine, or a acquaintance of mine who's the lean leader at Venice. You know, they only have maybe like 2 or 3 Kaizen events a year, and they're like a fully lean sort of organization, so, but you know, they make it work in a hospital setting, but not very often. It's more for really big overhauls.
It's treated like a vacation, basically, that person's gone on vacation. And so how would you normally backfill them for that situation? So, and then that's the intent that they're not supposed to be available, because it's supposed to be dedicated to this event too. So when you think about it in that term, and start talking about, okay, what if they actually are gone for an extended period? How would we normally handle this? And that's the discussion. It's hard if you're trying to do it within your own department.
Yeah, that's trickier because you
That is
can't all
trickier.
take a vacation, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more for the cross.
Yeah, so then those are like, how do you do that maybe in smaller pieces?
And I think too, you could even potentially do half days or something, and people can deal with the fires. At least you don't get the same impact, but again, it's better than 1 hour a week, because like you said, I bet you 50% of that is ramp up time, right? And then 50% is actually
Everything
value.
off, getting set up on the meeting, yeah, you lose 15, 20 minutes just unproductively.
I've been able to do more like, I've tried to at least do 90 to 120 minute periods when working on this type of stuff in the past, because I found an hour and you lose too much, but with that extra 30 minutes or 60 minutes has really helped. That's what I do a lot of it, love that. And to do like more than 1 meeting in a week, not we're gonna meet every week, so 2 or 3 times a week, when you really want to count something out, that's helped.
Yeah, just blocking the time off in advance, and have that off on the calendar already.
Yeah.
It's hard to schedule it the next one after that current meeting, because then you're a week or 2 out before you can find some time when everybody's available again, and just makes it difficult. So we say, you know, one of the first things we'll do is establish some kind of cadence around how we're gonna be hopping. So yeah, if you can, the more you can do it in a batch, not a batch, but in a set amount of time, that's more than an hour, the better. But yeah, I can see where just jumping to a week-long event would be shock to the system for some organizations. This is another example of some success stories. This is Woodfield Manufacturing. I think they're in the region. I don't know exactly where they're at, but they're part of another lean excellence group in Portland. So I think they're nearby. I need to look up where they're at. But they were able to reduce VOC emissions by 1,000 pounds per year and move out a lot of PVC waste through some value stream mapping activities. So when they started looking at where does, you know, sometimes time is the goal, other times it's actually just improving the metrics, and then you can use this for a lot of the environmental stuff, which is a real important topic in my mind, to show that these things can help with environmental footprint and environmental impacts of an organization as well. I don't know what you guys have for waste streams in your process, but same concepts could be applied to those types of things as well. And that could be a lot of money going out the door of, we bought the item and then we end up throwing away. And if we got paid to get it recycled, it's still not what we paid for it originally. So there's a whole booklet series from the EPA around lean in the environment and lean, some lean in government type of things. And then there's quite a bit of case studies now with lean in healthcare. It's growing, probably the last 10, 15 years. It's really been picking up pace. So there's some good resources out there we can dig up. This is another one, Baxter International Healthcare. So they did, they tried to reduce their environmental metrics by, even though the company was doubling in size and revenue, but they wanted to keep their waste generation down to their 1996 levels. And so they ended up doing a value stream map, and they identified 96 opportunities, and then if implemented, they would save $17,000 and 170,000 gallons of water per day through that. So I didn't find the actual, what they actually end up doing, but this is just an example out there. So the idea of the value stream map won't directly lead to savings. It's developing a plan that will lead to savings and efficiencies and customer satisfaction. So that's one of the key best practices, is to make sure that you have a plan afterwards. And in the video they mentioned, you're not just signing up for the event, you have to sign up for the 90-day follow-on activity that goes along with that. So, and that's a challenge, because now people they're gone for a week from their job. They come back the next week and they're backlogged with stuff that they didn't get done because they were at this event. And they also bring with them some action items that they got assigned from the event. And so sometimes that becomes a real challenge, that they never get caught back up for a couple weeks, and then they've lost the momentum and the excitement of the event, and then those things never get completed.
How often do you see people doing it with that best practice versus doing it more spread out?
It seems more common to do it spread out now. That has been the traditional model, and a lot of people just have fought that. And at the smaller sites I've worked at, they really fight against doing a full week. Just doesn't work that way. So the story of the whole week actually was not the model like Toyota used when they started off. They would do it in smaller batches of time, like 4 hours here, half day here, ongoing improvements throughout. What went to the 5-day, 4-day model was really when their consultants started working with companies, and there was travel involved. And so they figured out a way to condense it down. And there's a lot of value to doing it that way, because it's so intense and it's so rapid that within a week you have a lot of activity. But those will also get more into the Kaizen events, which is a different workshop I'll talk about. But those are where it's more working session, where this is more planning session. So the deliverable of the value stream map is a map of current state, a map of the future state, and an action plan. And you have to execute the action plan, basically. And that's where things come up. So usually we try to make the action plan have follow-on smaller events, Kaizen events, or short, 1-day, 2-day type of events, where we're going to go get everybody together and we're going to knock this out, versus try to do 1 hour a meeting spread out over time. It just takes too long.
Do you recommend doing a time study before getting the group together? Like, for instance, if you wanted to see the cycle time for a patient getting through an appointment or something like that, to have somebody with a stopwatch and get average time, so that you're not like trying to guess this sort of thing. You have some data in front of you to develop the futures or the current state.
Yeah, that's the prep work that goes into it. So I'll talk about that in the process piece of this, but that's a good point. Yeah, we definitely want to get as much actual real data and as much as we can prior to the activity. So it's just filling in the data, not having to go figure out how to go get that data. Sometimes we'll just have people bring some of the information, like yields and financials and stuff, but other things we have to go time because that data is not available. Or we have to go start collecting that data. Sometimes we'll send, maybe you've seen it in certain lines, like at TSA or something, they'll give you a card and say, hand this to the lady in the front. That's a timing study to see how long it takes to get through that process. So those types of things will get embedded, hopefully weeks in advance of that event. So you can also add in these other elements. Like I said, whatever's important to your organization, you can add that into the data box. So this one, they were looking at the water usage, and so they just added that as another piece of the data box. And so that's one thing you can do, is just put how much is used here, or that could be energy, or that could be some raw material that's getting consumed that's really expensive. It could be medical supplies and the cost there. So whatever you think is important can get added into the data box to highlight that. And then they just put down here as an additional, in addition to the time, they put in the total usage of that item or material. The other way you can do that is actually replace the timeline and just put in the actual, this is water again, how much water goes into the process and how much gets consumed. And then the gap would be how much is lost in the system somewhere or wasted. And so that could highlight, wait, we have 150 gallons going in and 60,000 gallons going out. We're losing 90,000 gallons there. Something's wrong. We have to, maybe that's a Kaizen event to go dig into why that's happening. So it's a kind of another way of modifying the map to make it reflect what you're trying to accomplish. So maybe time isn't the most important thing. So they're just replacing it in this example. But traditionally, it's going to be the timeline. It's going to be this bottom one. So there's some other tweaks to the process map, the value stream map you can put in here. So again, the goal is to really focus around the customer response time. And often people don't see it because each individual process is focused on their work and no one is looking between the processes and where the handoffs occur. So every time there's a handoff, to me, a little alarm goes off in my head, like there's probably some inefficiencies and waste in how that's being handed off. So, so that's the place we need to start. And oftentimes when we think about lean, we think, or people get the perception that we're going to come in and we're going to make people work harder and faster and give them more work to do and not really trying to improve the work. And so what we want to do first, and where we see a lot of the opportunities, is connecting the processes together more smoothly and cleanly. So when one process gets done, it goes and it connects into the next process and gets continued on. So we're connecting the dots between the whole processes and connect them together. So that's usually the first thing we do, to cut out the waiting in between the processes. So there's a lot of work that will be done first just to get that cleaned up. Then once we get all the processes aligned and connected, then we can deep dive down and look at, why does it take 10 minutes? Can I get that down to 8 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 minutes? And what are the wastes there? So usually we're not going after, I want to take that 5-minute process down to 2 minutes through automation. Because in a process that takes 10 days, the customer is not going to notice when you saved 3 minutes off that one process. They want to know why it takes 10 days. They want to see days cut out, and that's usually the handoffs where the days are, the opportunity to cut that out is showing up. So often jobs can take up 99% of the total time, 99% of it or more can often be wasted time, just sitting there waiting or steps being done that aren't adding value to the process. So a task that takes an hour can often take a week to get back to the customer on. And that's a similar example of about 99% waste in terms of time. So it's not that I'm wasting 99% of my hour, it's I'm wasting 99% of that week. So that'll be a lot of the initial opportunity. And so by the time we get into stuff of automating and improving the value-added part of the process, that's down the line a little ways. So here's a typical before. So once we do start to dig into the work a little bit, well, like for example, this 480 some days, this would be a whole day's worth of work and time. So let's say it takes 24 hours or one work cycle, 480 minutes of work is about 8 hours. Of that 8 hours of time that it takes to get through your process, most of that time in the red is waiting or non-value added work. And you can see that there's a little bit of green where some value added work is taking place. And the goal is we want to cut out all that wasted time and get it down to a lot less than that, which will condense our total amount of time. So what took 21 day response, we cut that down to 30 minutes response or 24 minutes of response time. And most of that time being value added time being applied to it.
Yeah,
So it's taking out the reds.
People, yeah, it's kind of human nature to focus on that green first.
Yeah, they said, how do I get that from 2 minutes down to 1 minute? That's not the biggest opportunity to start with. So that's the goal, is let's take the waste out of the process first, so we can free people up to do the work that they really want to do. And a lot of people, the green is what they really like doing. It's the value that they're providing. They're helping people. They're helping the mission of the organization. They're doing the work they got paid for. And all this other stuff is frustration and inefficiency and delays and confusion and difficulties that are not fun. And So if we can eliminate those and get people to spend more of their time providing value, and then be able to provide more and more value to handle more work because we've taken away the inefficient work, that's where we see the initial gains. So first step is take out the waste that people are having to do. Then later we can look at cutting that 24 minutes down to something less. Unless you've got where a big chunk of this time is green, as time that's value added, but there's opportunity to take the time out. But usually this is more of the example.
So you could have the waste in the connections between the times, or you could have the waste within the cycle time.
Yes. Yep. So usually the first one is going to be handoffs between the processes. Second would be waste within the process. And then third, finally, we might look at the value added and say, actually within that cycle time, there's opportunities to take waste out of there. And those are a little easier to tackle than trying to, and usually a lot of the green, improving the green gets into like, how do we automate that or make it, and that it causes investment and there's time to develop a system, and that just delays things. So it's actually slower to do those improvements as well often. Or I need a new machine or new equipment and I have to spend capital to get that. So we can do a lot of that other stuff quickly as well. Here's just another example where they put in kind of a before. So in the video they talked about the current state map, and that's the first thing you create. What's going on today, and that needs to be reflective of actual what's happening. Not what I think is happening or what the procedure says we're supposed to do. This is supposed to be reality. What's going on today. And so we have data, and we have numbers, and this is just what the current issue is. And then we'll later come in and do another value stream map, which would be the future state map. So I'll talk about that. And a lot of the things that get into that is, you know, I'm waiting for something to go out, and I'm going to start working on something else to keep productive. And at some point, a trick is to where do you draw the line and say, I'm not going to start anything new. I'm going to go back and micromanage these 7 items or 10 items or 5 items or 3 items. And I'm going to stay focused and make sure those get done and kind of prod on those instead of kind of being passive and waiting for them to respond. I'm going to loop back and say, I've hit my maximum. I'm not going to have more than 5 of these cases going on at once. And I'm going to loop back to number 1 and just hammering away till I free one up. And then I can bring in a new case when I get that one completed. I'll bring in another one and keep managing the other 4 or 5. But when that number grows to 20, 30, it's really hard to manage those in-process things. You start just tacking on more, and then you got to spend time reprioritizing your list. Where did I leave off with that one? Where's this one at again? So it's even internally keeping your own, it's called work in process, but you're keeping a limit on that. And starting to say, I'm not going to add on more to my plate. I'm going to stay focused on just these so I make sure that they can get done. That's something you can kind of do to help yourself a little bit, but and eventually you want to get to the suppliers too. So they are.
Yeah, that's fine. It just suddenly hit me. The one that we were talking about this week at least has some lean rattling around their organization. So, and actually, it was interesting that the project I was telling you about, that the person that I'm working with on that project actually happens to be in a very high position in the they who shall not be named organization.
Yeah.
So I actually may have the opportunity to ask that person their impression of me at their organization.
It would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, actually I will. That'll be good. He's a really good friend. Which I don't mention his name normally because I don't. He's at a higher level there, but I can at least find out some philosophical sort of things.
And when a company says we do lean, that can mean 150 different ways of what that interpretation of that means. It could be one pocket of success over here is where we do it and we don't do it anywhere else, or we actually, it's part of our culture. So yeah, I get all kinds of variety. So I usually, when people say, oh, you guys have a lean program, okay, explain exactly what you mean by that. Yeah. How serious are you guys with that?
Well, the good thing is actually I'm going to ask this guy if he thinks they have one and if they do what it means. And he's at a level that he should know, but, you know, have to incorporate it, I would think. So, I'm curious. Now I've got a couple little curiosities.
So in one of the other topics that I go through in the lean overview, we talk about these 8 forms of waste, and these are the things you want to look for in your process. Where you see transportation or moving of things or items around. Here's this document, who needs to, how do I get an answer about this? Oh, that needs to go to that department. Let me forward the email to them. Okay, well, no, we're not the right people. You need to forward it over to this group. That's all transportation. Nothing's improving with the item until it actually gets to somebody who can do something with it. So transportation can be email chains going around. It could be phone calls going around, and it could be actually physically moving items or people. All that is time that the value is not being created or improved. It's just taking up time from a distance standpoint. So any of those transportation opportunities. Inventory is where you see a backlog of things needing to be processed that aren't being done. That's a good place to find opportunities. Where do you see inventory? There's usually because something's stuck in the process. There's a video that our Lean Portland group is going to be showing called The Goal, which is a book written around inventory management and this concept of theory of constraints. So that's a free movie that they made a business video movie out of. It's like a 45-minute video. But it's really good about using inventory as an indicator of where to find your problems.
And it's at Providence, right?
At Providence, yep.
Yeah.
That's one of their theater. They have the theater there. So I'll send out a link to where that data is. But that's a really good way to learn this concept quickly and in an entertaining way. Motion would be movement within my own workspace. So I'm reaching for stuff. Even on my computer, I'm searching for documents. I'm looking for files. I'm loading up programs. I'm reformatting my desktop, my monitors to match things up. All that is waste that's taking time for me to get to where I need to go. So think about the wasted motion inside of your workspace, where transportation would be more movement outside of your workspace. Waiting, obviously, is anytime you're waiting for an approval, waiting for a decision, waiting for a supplier to get back to you. That's all time that's holding up the customer from what they want to get done. Over-processing would be you're doing value-added work, but at some point in that process, you switch from value-added to overdoing it. So yes, they want you to provide a chart, but it doesn't need to have fancy graphics and animation in it. And so giving them the chart is what they want in the value. All the extra stuff is non-value-added. They didn't want that or ask for that, but you spent time doing it. So it's kind of the opposite of providing poor quality. It's excessively good quality. It's above and beyond what they actually want or are willing to pay for.
That one's a really good one. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, so and usually it's at some point it gets overdone. And usually we would go and have people go talk to your customer and say, here's what I've been providing you every day or every week or every month. Do you utilize all this information? And usually the answer is from, I don't even open your email, to, yeah, most of this I use except for those last 3 tabs that I'm going to look at. And then you can say, cool, I can take out those last 3 tabs because that's wasting 15 minutes of my time that you don't even look at. So just talking to your customers can get some of those identified. We did that with a finance group, and that was, it was really disheartening a little bit and empowering to the team because they realized that half the stuff they were doing were automated reports set up years ago for a different manager, and nobody's even using it, and they're spending hours doing these reports for nobody. So cool, I can stop doing it, and all of a sudden they're freed up to do more work. Or they said, you know what, you're providing me some of this stuff, but I can get half the other stuff from somewhere else, and I'm already getting it in this other report, so just only provide me tab 1 of this information, or just this level of detail, and I don't need the rest of it. So the report's valuable, but not everything in the report.
Does something fall into that if you're doing sort of the same job for multiple organizations, just in a different format would fall into that, and there's got to be a way to...
Yeah, you could spend time saying, can I provide all of you the same information in one report? And that's okay if it's extra information, but as long as you're not wasting as long as somebody's getting value out of it, that's okay. It's where you're spending time doing it and nobody's getting any value out of that extra time. So you could do one report that addresses everybody's needs, and it saves you time, but also it gives everyone else what they want. So it's okay if you're giving them extra information, as long as you're not wasting time giving them information. At least somebody's getting some value out of it. That would be okay. So you'd have to kind of work through some standardization of what that might be.
Right. Well, I guess that's my question is, I mean, I do 3 different reports for 3 different companies in different formats. It's all the same information. So they're getting value out of it, but it takes me a lot of time to do the same information in 3 places.
Well, they may or may not be getting that.
Well, yeah. Well, they're asking for it. So
Right.
I guess that's, so does that fall into the same place on
If-
my end, but not on their end?
I guess it's okay if you're spending extra time, but you're giving them
What they
good
want.
value, that's okay. If you're saying that, could you do it, like, I would think like an opportunity would be if you have to provide it in 3 different formats, could you get one format that you could easily run and send it out and it meets all their needs? So there might be some opportunities to do that, but if they each need it in a certain format and it takes you more time to do it, but they value that, then that's okay. Even
And
if it's
that falls into
inefficient.
spending more time on something because it has value.
Yeah, so as long as the customer says, I need it in this format because I uploaded it in our EHR system, that's okay. It's, I take your report and I have to go format it myself, and you could easily provide it in that direct format for them, then that's a waste for them to do. So oftentimes we see that we're not saving any time, but we're saving our customers' time or our payers' time, and that there's value in that, even though it directly doesn't show up on our bottom line. We're increasing our value to them at the same cost, whatever. So there's customer satisfaction gains that are hard to quantify, but definitely you want to do a lot of those. So yeah, I've seen where it actually takes more time on our end to give the customer more value. And in the long run, that's going to be good for us because they're going to like that and be happy about it. So that's okay too, as long as there's value being provided to the customer.
But I like your example of finance. There may be value added, or they may be okay with something else.
Right.
Right. So if they'd be okay with something else, then it would be over processing, but you don't know until you ask them.
I've had one group just stop doing a report and see who called. And nobody called. And so they're like, okay.
I've tried that one.
Yeah. And if they call, then you're okay. There's value here, especially if you have a lot and you don't know who all the customers are. So, you know, it depends how critical it is. Obviously, if it's a very critical financial report that's getting published somewhere, you don't want to try that out. Something non-critical you could try.
The other flavor of that might get you in a little less trouble is when you send it out at the bottom of your email, you say, I'm checking my process to see who needs this. Please let me know if you want to continue receiving it.
Yeah.
And then if nobody gets back to you, you got a clear slate to, you know.
That's a good way to try it too. Like that. Overproduction would be when you do more than what, in advance of what the customer wants. So you're doing more prediction, forecasting, anticipation of what they want. It could be a report. It says, I think my customer wants this report in the first week, so I'm going to do that. But oftentimes it's ahead of when they actually need it. So the example I give is, at the end of the month, I issue a weekly report. But my customer is on vacation and they come back a week later and they say, actually, can you add in this week's, I pushed my meeting out a week because I was gone. Can you rerun that report with the latest information from this week? So this led to rework and over processing because it would have been better if I had waited until they actually needed the report. And so getting connected in with your customers and saying, it's available, I could do it right now, but do you need it right now? I want to do it once and I want to do it right. And so I don't want to go back and have to do it over again. So just getting connected in with when your customer actually needs what they want, not some schedule or some long-term plan that says, send it to me the first of the week, kind of go validate, says, I got a lot of things going on, do you actually need it right now? Or can I get it to you Tuesday? That would actually be better and it's more timely for you. So just being connected in with your customers. And on like the manufacturing side, there's a lot of manufacturers will build to a forecast, and they'll rush around and work overtime to make product for a schedule, and the customer's like, we got too many, and we're not selling as fast as we wanted. And actually, now all that stuff is sitting in inventory and accruing money. That's money I could have left in the bank, and I didn't have to pay all that extra time and labor and overtime to do that. So it comes, on the parts and product thing, it becomes very expensive when you build to an anticipated quantity, not an actual demand from a customer. So usually they'll set up a system that is forecasting the materials, the raw materials, but waiting until they see actual orders before they actually process them through. So that's when you have overproduction, it ends up creating other waste in the process. And if you have defects and errors, that creates rework and extra activity, and all the time spent not doing it right the first time is waste. And then finally, there's another one that's around skills. Are we utilizing the people that we have to the fullest extent? Are we maximizing their abilities? Are we getting information out of them about ideas and improvements? Are we just saying, stay busy and stay focused, keep your head down, and just do your work? And maybe if we looked at, understood them, and knew what skill set they had, we could move them into an area where they could excel. So just not utilizing people to the fullest potential they have. That's another form of waste. So these are the things we want to look for in the process. And after you do the current state map, those things you're going to hear those things pop out. And we're going to capture those and highlight those with these burst symbols. And we're going to come up with a plan. So that would be, those would be listed on the current state map. So you do the current state, then you put these burst symbols on there, like too much inventory, scheduling problems with staff, customer complaints, rework loop, poor yield, and all you're doing is listing the problem or the opportunity there. And then we come back and we talk about what can we do to eliminate those opportunities and fix them, and then what would that new process look like? And this would be the after effect or the future state map. And so you'd say, we're going to put in a Kanban system and then have it pull from process to process, and that's how we're going to connect these two processes together. And here we got a lot of wasted poundage, so let's try to address why we're losing so much of that was like some raw material in that process. And here we have some delivery issues going on there. And here we've got physically, we're sending information out and we want to automate that or make that electronic to speed that up. And so you highlight what the improvements will look like in the future state. And usually we put in another step before that. It's called an ideal state. And that's intended to break people out of their current line of thinking. Because a lot of people get very limited in their future state because they know they're constrained by today's current process. So they say, well, we can't change that. Our system won't allow that. So we got to break people out of that mindset first, because then you just get incremental improvements to future state. So often we'll go and say, how would you run this process based on what we talked about so far and the problems we have in the current state? If you were to start over from scratch, what would that look like? You had all the money and materials and machines and equipment you could have. How would you do this process starting over? You're starting in a garage and that's all the space you have. Well, how would you set this process up? And then let's come back to reality and say, okay, we're not obviously going to be able to do that, but with that line of thinking, how can I work backwards? How can I move towards that future vision or ideal situation instead of just staying limited to say, how do I tweak the current situation? So that breaks people out of the mindset of, I can't do that, we can't go that far, and they just get really locked in. Some people ask about how process maps line up with value stream maps. They're a little different. The idea with the value stream map, again, is the whole system. And there's pieces around there with the data that gets added to that. Whereas in most process maps, it's just a series of steps, and you're really looking at the routing of those steps. You might put in decision points and little decision points that say, if it's this, go here, and if that, go there. You might put in the rework loop, like you were talking about. The loop that says that now it goes to rework, and then it goes over here, and back up to here, or back over to here. You put in all the inefficiencies at the detail level. But you would only go down to that level after you've identified that this major box in the value stream was an opportunity area that we want to focus in on. Then we deep dive into the process map of that step, which has many different detailed activities going on. Sometimes I've seen the maps that just get at this level for the whole thing, and they make a wall of the value stream map across the whole. Like they'll fill the wall of both sides with steps, and it's, to me, that's pretty overwhelming. Unless you have some intent that that's going to be useful to the whole team.
So you go through a value stream map and you've identified your current state, and you have times and everything, you have all of the data, and your object is to change that ratio between non-value added time and value added time, etc. And you get a better ratio.
Yep.
You get a better number. When do you know when it's good enough?
Well, it's never good enough.
Okay, but like good enough for the amount of time that it took you to go through the whole process to get to an improvement. It's like, what is the ROI on another improvement cycle, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. Depends on how bad things are. So go back to your customer, and that's going to be the indicator at some point. They're going to say, wow, this is so much better, this is great, we're really happy now, or you're making progress, you're still not happy with how things are going. So at some point, when you can get the customers off your back a little bit, then you can feel like you've got enough improvement for now, and then just know that what we're really trying to build is a culture around improvement. So this isn't a one-time-a-year event, but we build in ongoing improvements, and the value stream map every year is really a check-in to see, are we still on the right track? Are we still focused in the right areas? But it shouldn't be a one and done. I did the value stream map, and I see that a lot. We just did a value stream map last year. Why do we got to do another one? Because we're trying to improve over time. It's not a one-time deal. And we don't just only use the map and the lean events to do improvements. We want to be doing it ongoing. And this is really a chance to regroup and make sure we're still focused on the right things. And we still understand what value the customer wants. Just reevaluate where we're at.
Well, and wouldn't it be just a good thing to check back that you are actually at your future state?
Improving. Yes.
You know, have we met the future state and are we maintaining it? Because just because you've met it at one point doesn't mean that 6 months down the road you're still going to be at that point.
Yep. And I've had that where, we made a lot of improvements, but the metrics have not really gotten that much better as what we thought. And so it allows us to reflect and talk about that and say, why aren't we seeing the inventory levels come down? Why aren't we seeing the lead time get lower? Or, yep, we actually have gotten better than what we thought. It's actually working really well in this part of it. So, yeah, it's a chance to regroup and do that. But, yeah, ultimately we want to have this ongoing improvement. And then this is our opportunity to make sure we're on the right track. So the process map would spin out of the opportunities we identified with this area. And that could be a follow-up activity or event with a smaller team that goes off and does that. Something else. Yeah, I'll get to the ideal state here in a second. So in your handouts, you got a little exercise there. So I'm going to play a video and see how this goes. Try to
what's VA time?
what's that? VA?
Oh, value added.
Value added time, yeah. So this is part of a value stream. So someone's making a pizza. The pizza making is not the value stream, it's a subset of that, right? The whole value stream of a pizza would be like a pizza delivery shop, like a Papa John's. What would be the full value stream, start to finish?
From the time the order comes in until the time it's delivered to the customer?
Yeah, right. So all we're looking at here is a subset from making the pizza. And that could be just one box in a value stream. Or it could be a couple boxes, depending on how detailed. So I'll show you an example of the full picture. So in your handouts, I've got 3 things here. Let me just go ahead and give you the name of this. So the first one will be, the first step in here is going to be the dough prep process, or just called dough. So that would go on the very top lines of each of those 3 boxes. So that, not all 3 of them. The first one would be dough. The second one will be sauce. And the third one would be toppings. And you might look at this video and say, oh, I would have separated those a little differently. And so that's what the second section in here would be, an explanation of what is done in those steps. If there's confusion about, is that part of the dough process or the sauce process? Then we're going to be able to look at the cycle time of that. So if you have a little stopwatch on your phone, that when you see them switch to another process, we're going to try to get an estimate of time. And I might have to play it through a second time through to get that. And then I'm going to go back through and we're going to look at one of the steps, and I'm going to try to break out the value added from the total time. See how much of that time actually looks like value added time out of the total. Okay? So first time through, you can observe and try to do some timings around what it takes, but a little bit of difficulty is he's going to explain some stuff as they're going along, and then he's going to go and work through the process, and then during that time he'll stop and explain some things too. So that's kind of built into some inefficiencies in this, but the idea is just to try to get a feel for where the numbers would go onto this sheet. Okay, so there's going to be a couple points where he's going to talk for a little bit, and then he's going to start reaching for dough, and that'll be the first start. The second point where I'm going to segment the next process will be when he slides the dough over to put the sauce on. So he's going over to a sauce station. That would be the second point. And then when he's done with the sauce and slides it over to start putting the toppings on, that'll be the third point in the process where the time will switch over. So the time in between those different stages is what we want to try to capture. And this is done one piece at a time, so there's very little wait time between. But you will see some inventory in the process, so also try to capture as best as you can where you see inventory in the process. Okay?
My name is Dawson Gibbs, and I'm going to show you how to make a Papa John's pizza for when you get hungry. What you need is dustinator, a docker, and a large dough, which we keep in here. What you want to do is get the large dough out, coat it in the dustinator, get it down, interlock your fingers so you can get a nice edge, and slowly go through your pizza just like this about once or twice so you can get a good edge going. And then once you're done with that, flip your dough over, coat it with a little bit of dustinator, and stretch it till it's about 75% of its original size. And then once you stretch it out, get your docker, dock it about 8 to 10 times. So it's nice around, and then once it's done, you put your thumbs in, palms, and slap it out. And what you want to do, fit it to a large screen. Once it's fitted to the screen, you want to get about a cup of sauce so it goes on a large dough. Put it in the middle and slowly sauce it. What you want to do, make sure your sauce is evenly distributed on the pizza. And once it is, make sure it's everywhere. And then once you get done, you want to put your toppings on it. You want to get about a handful of your toppings. Make sure it's all over your pizza. If you want to balance it out, make sure it's evenly distributed. About a handful of sausage. Same thing. Make sure it's all over the pizza. And then you get your Canadian bacon. Not as much as ham. Get about half a handful. Spread spread it all over your pizza. And once you get there, with the chicken's bigger, so you only want a couple pieces of chicken on it. And then you just want to put a couple pieces on each of the pizza. And once you get your chicken on there, you want to move down and put your pepperonis. You only do about 963. Only put a couple pepperonis on there. Make sure it's all over the pizza. And then after that, this is the easiest part. A large pizza gets 2 cups of cheese. 1 on each side. Side. One on the other side, and round it up. Once you're done, put it in the oven. That's how you make the pizza.
Timing it, it's roughly like a little over a minute to do the dough prep. Like as soon as you start reaching for the dough, to the time you actually put the dough onto that screen and split it over. About a minute or so. And then another like 30 seconds to put the sauce on there. And then another minute and a half to get all the toppings put on there. I don't know if that was clear. So where you draw the line on that is a little vague sometimes. And so just clarifying that will be part of the steps. But that's kind of the high level you would break it down into that process. And in other value stream maps, the whole assembly of the pizza might be one box. In other value stream maps, it might be broken out into bigger sections. So I see wherever there's a point where things can sit or get delayed, then that might be a separation point. So did you see any inventory in the video? Where did you see the inventory in the process?
We have all the preset dough clumps ready to go.
Yep. So going into that process, there's those trays. There you had a tray on the bottom on the floor, and then he stacked it up against that wall over here. So those could be completed trays. Maybe those are full of dough in them. I'm not sure yet. We'd have to, go out there and actually look and see what that is, that completed or done. But if those are, even if those are completed, we know that at any given point, they're probably bringing out 20 trays of dough with 5 in each tray. So maybe at the beginning of the day, there's 100, dough balls sitting out there in the process. So that would be, we count up all those and say that's the inventory going into that process. So basically, what we're timing is a dough ball arrived in that process. How long before I actually got it through that whole process? And the waiting is that it's sitting, waiting to get processed through all those previous trays in the area. So the question is, why did I make so much dough ahead of when I actually needed it? Could I have been doing something else with my time than making dough balls at that point in the process? And maybe there's a justified reason for that, but it's an opportunity and we want to dig into it and ask those questions. So why is there so many trays in this area at that point? Why are they sitting out? Are they losing value as they're sitting there? Is it at risk of going bad or having to be reworked because it's sitting out there? And could I have been doing something else more valuable with my time? Maybe there's a customer backlog and someone knows over making dough balls and they could be helping the customers. So it's allocating the workloads to the right time as well. So that's the first inventory. And there's maybe 100 dough balls sitting in that process. So that would be something we record there. Then later in the process, you see some other inventory.
Well, the sauce and the toppings.
Yep. So yeah, we have a little bit of a storage of those in the containers. We can go and try to get an estimate of weight or how many containers are full of each of the toppings. In a perfect world, they would be brought in from the fridge and dropped on the pizza just in time, but that's probably not immediately even get to that type of point. So yeah, at some point we're going to have the right number of containers out there that keep the ingredients fresh and cycled through, but we don't run out either. So having some kind of system, and maybe it's a two-bin system, so every time I pull an empty one, I drop it off and someone replenishes it, brings back another one as I'm working down the other bin I've got. So we just have some system that says I don't want to have too much of one ingredient sitting out in the open for an extended period of time. That's faster than that's slower than what I consume it at. Where it sits too long, or it gets processed too fast that I don't have enough there to keep up. So working out the right amount for each of those, and it looks like certain ingredients have more storage than others, so there is some rhyme or reason to that. Any other inventory you noticed?
There's inventory from the sloppage.
Yeah, all that little trough of overshot ingredients and cheese sloppily put on there, and chicken falling on the ground, and yeah, it's not the most efficient way of putting ingredients on a pizza. But you could gather all that up, sweep it up, and count it, and say there's 8 pieces of chicken there, and those are 25 cents a piece, and there's a pound and a half of cheese, and that's got a cost to it. And you can start to quantify those and really try to figure out how much waste is going on and how much is being consumed. So that's an observation you can make on that. That would be something like a scrap rate or defect rate of the process. And that's something I could put in the data box. How much of the chicken actually doesn't make it onto the pizza? That could be a good metric. Any other inventory you noticed?
Oh, there's the pans that they put the pizza on. I mean, there's the tools and the cooking implements.
Yep. Yeah. Before he goes to the screening, what we saw was him go one piece flow through the whole process, but that's not how the process looks like it works. What's all this?
Pre-made crust.
Pre-made, yeah. So they built up an inventory at this point in the process for some reason. Maybe there's a logical reason behind it. This is a lunch period. Doubt it, because he's filming a video in the middle of it. So they're not really backlogged, that it doesn't seem. So what is all this doing here is a good question to ask. And maybe there's some reason that says, you know what, that's a very long process and we got to keep up with our demand during a lunch rush. We want to have these many. But I'd really look at this and say, do you need 3 trays of 20 each, 15 each in there? Do you really need 45 pre-made dough pieces ready to go? Or we just get bored and start making these ahead of time? Because the problem with this is look at what's happening to the crust, right? Some of this may require rework. And then at the end of the day, how long can it sit on the shelf before I have to do something with it? Or does it have a shelf life? That, 15 minutes after I made it and then I got to throw it away, or, those are all, it's at risk. And so we have to balance our demand fluctuation, which may be a good reason to have some inventory, with the risk of carrying that much inventory ahead of time. And if that starts to drip over and it has to be fixed, or it creates a quality issue with the crust itself, maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know. It's just questions. And we'd have to dig into it. Why do we have 20-some crusts pre-made in this area? So that looks like that's the process. Is someone's making the dough and they put them on the shelf. And then someone grabs off the shelf. And that might be okay, but probably not 20. You probably don't need 20 of them. Maybe you need 5. And then how do I connect that process to this one? When I get to 6, I stop. And the person on dough goes and does something else. They take on one of the toppings. They help the flow. And then when they see that this drops down to 2, I go back and I start making more crusts. So I have min and max levels that control my inventory and what I do. So that's the types of things we'd start asking questions around and digging. Why is there so much inventory? Is there a purpose for it? Inventory is not always bad, but it should be there for a specific reason and be controlled. It's not just, we just make as much as we can because we're bored and we want to keep people busy. Because that can actually create a lot of problems. So part of lean, that's another counterintuitive thing with lean is sometimes it's okay not to do anything. Because you can do more damage and create more problems by being busy and doing work ahead of when you need it. That might have to be redone or thrown away or tossed or have poor quality because of starting it too early. So that gets people a little confused sometimes too. Isn't the goal is to keep everybody working 100% productive all the time? And Lean would say, no, you need to work at the pace that the customer needs, not just to keep busy. So that was the other inventory, and that would be in front of the sauce process. You would have an inventory, and you list out, we have 20-some screens or crusts at that point in the process.
So that's one thing I'm a little confused on. So when you're doing inventory, I mean, we're talking about specific products that go into the end product, but are you also somewhere tracking your customer requests volume on the?
You can do that in the data box. It says we get this many orders a day.
Okay. So you do
Our
that
demand,
in the data,
the
you do that
demand.
in the data box?
That'd be in the data box, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. So yeah, we get this many orders coming in, and it could be different types. You could say we get this many call-in orders, we get this many walk-ins, we get this many such and such, or between these hours we get this type of demand, and then during these hours we get a different type of demand. So yeah, any information that's helpful for the team to see what's going on. We'll get in another workshop called the Advanced Standard Work. We'll get into the demand and then understanding the tack time, or how often do we need to keep up, how quickly do we need to produce one item every X number of minutes or hours to keep up with the demand that the customer has. And then build our process to be lined up to meet that speed. So we want to match what the customer needs and the rates they need it. And sometimes people just keep wanting to go faster than you have to. Your process might be slow and inefficient, but it might be okay because it still is able to keep up with the process. And let's go work somewhere else where we're actually behind what the customer needs. So we want to be smart about where we're making improvements, where we need to make improvements. So that would be, so we would capture the times, and we could go back and record it if you want, but for the sake of time, I want to get into a little bit of breakdown of the value added from the total cycle time. So if you go to the next sheet, I have a little bit of a breakdown of, and this is actually a little bit incorrect. I didn't give you the correct version. It's a defect on my part. I need to update this sheet. So I counted up 22 screens here. I said roughly 100 pounds of toppings, but you could also list this as the number of pizzas sitting in that process, and if there was no pizzas waiting to go into the toppings area, so that could actually be 0 pizzas. But you could keep track of the raw materials or the toppings and have a separate one for the actual pizzas at that point. So here's 22 pizzas. This is 89 dough balls, and that could also be reflected as maybe 0 pizzas, but we could also capture that there is some inventory in terms of the materials, raw materials, the toppings. So this is what I captured from the video going over a couple times, 73 seconds from the time he starts to reach for the dough. I included the time he took the tray off and set it aside, and then went and scooped out the one dough ball that he used and put it in the destinator. Then the sauce took 25 seconds from the time that the screen was placed down and he shifted it over. So it arrived in front of the screen, clock started. Then when he slid it out of the sauce area, the clock stopped. And then I had about 100 seconds from the time he started putting the toppings on to when he picked it up and moved it over into the oven. Okay, so that would be data we would record on there, and that would go down here in the bottom. 73 seconds, 25 seconds, 100 seconds. What I did also was I broke out and I figured out how much of that time looked like value-added time. And I came up with 70 seconds, 10 seconds, and 30 seconds. The rest of that I felt was wasted effort and motion. That could be an opportunity to reduce it down further. So that's what I recorded in here as well. I also captured that the toppings, I said, I don't know what that number is, but let's say it's about 2% of the stuff falls into through the grate or falls on the floor and basically doesn't get on the pizza. So we could weigh that versus the total amount of inventory we have and come up with a percentage. But I just guessed and said it's maybe 2%. So that's what the value stream map section of this would look like. And if you look at this diagram, I don't know if that's in your handout. Sorry, I didn't give you that one, but this would be the full value stream picture, and we looked at this section of it for this part of the process, right? So there's an warehousing process, and I didn't even put it in there. There's probably like an ordering process. So I guess it comes up over here. That ticket system goes in by where the dough comes out, probably somewhere in there. I'm just kind of guessing on some of this. We have the oven process, we have the cutting and the boxing of the item, and then we deliver it to a customer one pizza at a time, or one order at a time. And there's a supplier process, and maybe there's a 2-week turnaround from the supplier to the pizza shop. And I'd get some other metrics and the timeline from those other areas, and capture data on those as well. So this would be the full value stream picture. Does that make sense? And then I actually went and showed where where I got those times from the video.
What is the 360 seconds?
So that would be the time that I felt that it would be waiting. Let's see, the sauce. This would be the pizzas were on the rack. So I had 22 pizzas.
Oh, God.
How long did I think it would take, maybe this is during lunch rush, before when the pizza went onto that rack, by the time it actually got done through that process. So you have to do a time count on that. Someone would put it on there and say, I put it onto that rack at 11:02, and that was only 6 minutes there. It's probably longer than that. Then at 11:08, it actually left the rack and went on to the next step.
Because he's normally not doing it the way he showed it.
Right,
Okay,
right.
got it.
So that was a little confusing. I wasn't sure if I should do it that way or the way I showed it in the video.
And the 73 and 30 seconds, so that's technically value at a time, but you felt like 30 seconds of that was really value added.
Yeah, this is how long the process took, the cycle time.
But you
and
felt
I looked at this, and I want to go back and look at this real quick with you guys. So let's pick.
So future state and then, or current state and future state numbers essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, that's how long it's taking today, and here's what I potentially think it could take without improving how that work's being done. It's just saying he's running that scraper tool over it, I'm calling that value at a time, but there might be another tool that just clamps down and does that in a second.
Or maybe he's over processing, he's putting
Exactly.
it 3 times, and he only needed to do it twice.
Right.
Or something. Okay.
So I'm counting that time. Well, actually, and I did take a little bit of that into account too. So let's look at that one process. That's pretty interesting. So I'll tell you when I think he's adding value to this process out of this, what was it, 73 seconds, I think?
Yeah.
So I started the clock.
Parmesan pizza for when you get hungry. What you need is dustinator, a docker, and a large dough. You keep it here.
No value, no value, no value, no value, no value,
Large dough out.
no value.
Coat it
Maybe
in
there's value going on here.
Get it
There.
down.
Stop, no
Interlock your
value,
fingers so you
stop.
can get a nice edge.
Value.
And slowly go through your pizza, just like
Now I'm
this.
thinking maybe he's over processing, so I know value. It's probably overdoing it.
Good edge going.
Maybe not, I don't know.
And then once you're done with that, flip your
Okay,
dough
maybe he's
over it.
adding some value here.
Coat it with a little bit of
Scooping it, just add value, putting it on the crust
stretch it
studs.
so it's about 75%
There's value, I
original
assume.
size.
At some point, I'd say overdoing it,
And once
no
you stretch
value.
it out, get your docker.
Value.
Docker about 8
Probably done. Got a couple extra scoops, don't need that. So getting that down to 5, 6 scoops or
Always slap it out.
value, value,
What you want to do, get it to a large
no value.
screen.
Maybe value, value.
Once it's fitted to the screen, you want to get about a cup of sauce that goes on a large.
So that's where I came up about 30 seconds of that time. I thought he was actually making the crust better and doing something to improve the quality of the crust and moving it forward in the process. Everything else was kind of like motion around that. So he was like scooping up the dustinator. That's not making the crust better. When he placed it on there again, maybe there was some value. Or maybe we find out you don't have to do that step. It actually does nothing for the customer. So even like on the sauce, he'll scoop that sauce. There's no value added being applied yet. It's only when the sauce hits the crust or the bread, the dough, well, does the value start. They just decided to use a ladle, but there's other ways to get sauce onto the dough that may be more efficient. So as we start to break these out, you start seeing that even in a fairly efficient process, you can still cut out 25 to 50% of the time when you figure out ways to get the waste out of it.
Earlier we were talking about the big value things, or the 360 seconds. Like you start with that, right? And then come back, and then you work on the 73, 30 seconds sort of opportunities.
Because the employees know that this is hung up in the process, and they're frustrated with the delays. And I don't want to go in and start an attack. You know, it feels like an attack, but it's nitpicking into their process when they know that there's bigger problems. So we got to clear out the big problems out of the way first. Then they're going to be more open to, okay, yes, let's start talking about what I do and make my job a little better and easier. So yeah, if you go right to that, then people get frustrated because they're like, yeah, but you're just making me push that process to let it sit for days at the next step, or hours or minutes to the next step. And so let's I would clear out this first, and I would clear out this issue over here first, then come back and start looking at the waste in the process. So usually that's why I don't even get into maybe that level, the first round too. I just get the cycle time. And then later we say, this is an opportunity area. Now let's start to break out how much of that time actually is value added.
And I would imagine too, if you're involving employees in this all along, their eyes will start to see the waste more.
Yep.
And they may even just start applying some of this.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, well, the first question is, why is my dough sitting on the ground and I'm having to bend and reach, and that's ergonomic issues and that's potential problems. Why isn't it up next to the shelf and set up for me, and why is it, maybe it's at an angle so I can just scoop it out and pop them out much easier.
And
so it's just very simple things.
Because obviously it can be out exposed to the air.
Yeah.
And the ground is a really hygienic place.
Yeah, maybe that's why there's a lid for the rats stay out of it.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity there, right? And they have instructions and stuff, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of vagueness in what he was doing. Couple scoops of this, couple handfuls of this. There's some opportunity.
Sometimes what he was saying didn't match up with what he was doing either. I was like, hey, a little bit of chicken, that looks like a lot of chicken.
That's a lot, yeah. And then you can start to see, and then we can get down a level and say, break out the toppings and say the pepperonis take a long time to place on there. Is there easier ways to do that? So that's how you would describe and put that onto the map. And then it'd be part of this bigger map that we would look at. And then based on this current state, we would start to highlight opportunities, put a little burst and say, we're wasting a lot of toppings here. We've got a lot of inventory here. We've got a lot of inventory here. Maybe we have some customer complaints, and we highlight how many customer complaints we're having and try to figure out where those are coming from. Is it they got the wrong topping, they got the wrong item, it took too long, they got delivered to the wrong location? What are those issues, and try to highlight problems. And then we, as a team, the whole team would decide, where do we start? Where's the biggest opportunities of those items? And come up with a plan to go attack those with improvement events or a small team of people going off and looking into those. And then from there, we would say, if we were to solve those issues, what would our future state look like? But I would also first go and do an ideal state, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second.
And do sometimes people do it where they do the initial before their event? They kind of come into it with a map? Is that the case sometimes? Or is it better because you want everybody in the room?
You want people to see how that's pieced together.
But you want them to come with the data because you wouldn't have the data. Okay.
Yep. And that'll be part of this gather data and the preparation phase to bring to the table. Yeah. It is, you really do want everybody to be hearing how the process is unfolding versus just popping in, giving their 2 cents, and leaving, and they don't really still see it. So we're trying to teach people the value stream. and get familiar with how that whole process works. So the steps we'll go through is defining which product or service you want to focus on, and that's what defines the value stream. So you might have many different products and services you offer, and we're going to pick one of those that is struggling the most, or having the most customer issues or costs, or whatever criteria you use to drive improvements, and we're going to map out the flow of those requests from the customer through that whole process. And then you might later determine that you have a series or family of products and services that all kind of go through the same process. So that might be how you want to map it as a product or service family. I'll talk about that. Then we'll talk through what the improvements need to be, or what goals are we trying to achieve with that. Then we'll figure out who should be involved, go gather data and the preparation work and the observations, conduct the mapping events, develop an action plan, then check in every 30, 60, 90 days, make sure we're on track. And I would have like weekly meetings leading up to those. And then a refresher gets scheduled to say, when should we come back and redo this mapping exercise to see where we're at? Usually it's about a year. Every year you should have an update to your map. So the first thing is find the product or service that has the most frequent requests, has the highest volume of work, or most amount of labor that goes into it. Most critical products or services that you have, maybe it's high visibility, or it's a growth area that we're going to really expand this area in the future. We really want to dial it in now. Or it has the most issues or problems or complaints. Talk about future growth area, or high visibility, or some other strategic reasons for doing that. This is a key customer that we really want to get right, because that could lead to huge growth if we really get our product and service to that customer running smoothly. So whatever your criteria is, that should be determines which thing you value stream map. Here's an example of defining product families. So these could be different products and services, and you can look at the processes they go through and group them. Say these are essentially the same type of thing. They go through the same flow, yet they're different in some way. They're different customers, they're slightly different forms, they're different payers, whatever it is, but generally the flow is relatively similar. It's the same people, it's the same type of things, and so it makes sense that we're going to actually map D and E together and have them both go through the same value stream mapping exercise. Or A, B, and C together are almost identical, so let's keep them together in a product or service family. So that could be part of the assessment, and these would be the steps of the processes that you have, and these would be the different products or services that you offer. So wherever you see a alignment where these kind of line together and match up pretty closely, then it makes sense to keep them together into the value stream. So it's called a product family. If it's a standalone and it's only A and it has its own unique process, then we just keep it by itself. But it's easier if you can get more things into the same flow. Then you have more repetition and you have more consistency in the process. So then we determine what do we need to improve on this value stream. We got to address customer complaints and issues. I would start there because that's visibility to your customers, and that's important. Look at financial issues with overtime, profit margins, inventory, scrap, yield issues, warranty claims if you have that, or penalty payments, or are you guys liable for stuff now with if they return in 30 days with treatment that didn't work, or that they have a recurrence of a problem in 30 days, you have to pay for that? Or
the nice thing on the provider side is you just get more money when they come back.
So I thought that was like starting to go away.
Hospital, yeah, it is.
Hospital side.
Hospital side,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is more value versus volume is definitely coming our way.
Yep, okay. So if you have money where, hey, we had to treat this patient a second or third time, that's cost that is rework, and that can be quantified somehow. Maybe you're getting paid for it today, but you might know that that might go away in the future.
That's what's broken about America. Yeah.
So we want to get ahead of that, so let's get our cost down on that now in anticipation of those things coming. Flow issues, bottlenecks, missed deliveries, late shortages of running out of supplies or materials. And then employee complaints and issues. So you have customers and you have employees that have issues, ergonomic issues. People won't show up, high turnover in certain areas, poor tools or lack of training going on, or constant interruptions and chaos in that area. That might be an area to start looking at too. But you want to define, the goal of this event is ultimately we need to bring our inventory down, we need to reduce the bottlenecks so we can speed that response time to the customer, or we need to cut our overtime costs, or we need to reduce our customer complaints. But you want to define some key metrics that you're trying to make better, so the team can stay focused.
Would be the other one.
Yeah, I kind of lumped it under customer
But it would be,
complaints
right,
and like
yeah.
scrap, and I guess rework would be in here as part of the overtime. So you're just at least defining, here's what we think is going to, here's what we're trying to improve upon, so we can stay focused in the event to say, yes, that's an opportunity, but remember, that's not our biggest thing right now. We're really trying to look at the financial part of this, or the speed of the process, or the inventory and how much work and process is going on there. So just gives a little prioritization to the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Then we schedule a time, so as soon as you know what you're going to do and where you're going to focus, get your team defined and get it on the calendar so you can actually carve out the time for that. And again, even if it's some half-day sessions, it still takes time to coordinate that scheduling. So identify key resources across the value stream, and you want to have representation from everybody through that value stream. That's why the size of the events can grow pretty large sometimes. I try to keep it 12 or less. I mean, get into 30 people, that gets really difficult. But maybe for the process you're looking at, it involves that many different departments or groups, then bring them on. So, and we'll use a site talk diagram to help identify teams and resources. And sometimes we think about the people who do the work, but we don't think about all the stakeholders. So for you guys, it may not be the customer, it may be an agency or a government department that has oversight and has issues with the process as well than just the end customer. So we want to include them in the discussion. Find the people with the most experience, not people who are available. Someone had a good quote, they said, availability is not a skill set. So just because someone is around, or usually people say, I can't commit my most important person to this, I'm going to send the new person to go sit in on that event. That's not what you want. You need the most experienced person who can talk about what the process and how it works. Otherwise, you're not going to get a pure picture of the current state. And you're not going to get buy-in for what comes out of that. Because they said, well, yeah, but they don't really know the process, so what they said really is not accurate, and so, yeah, we're not buying into that solution. So delay the event if you don't have the right people. It's better to get the right people there than try to rush through it with the wrong people. Confirm the attendance and expectations. We need you here. Make sure you're going to be here. Your time's dedicated. You can't be running around answering calls all day long, too. You need to act like you're on vacation. Just confirming. And there's follow-up work that you're going to have to be a part of as well. And your expectation is you are representing this department in this process. So I know you used to work in quality, but now you're in billing. You are representing billing. You're not representing quality. We have someone else doing that. You can give input on that, but sometimes people just, they're just kind of a general observer and they don't realize that you have to go take the information from the event back to your team and get some buy-in on that. So if you think they're going to react negatively to what's being proposed, you might need to step out and go call some people and say, this is what they're talking about doing. What do you guys think about this? Because you're a representative of that team. And so there's going to be some other things we'll talk about around that with the daily report out. To get people on the same page so it's not a shock at the end of the week or the end of the session. That's what you guys are proposing? Wait, I don't like that at all. This is a site talk diagram. It's a supplier, input, process, output, customer. It's using the high-level value stream map steps. So you're going to already kind of sketch this out at a high level. And then you're going to use who is the recipient of work coming out of these processes, or basically what is coming out of these processes, and then who is the recipient of those things. And so there's documentation that comes out of the processes, and who gets that documentation. And so you match up and list out all the customers of that process. And some are going to be the direct customer, and some are going to be the indirect customers. And same thing on the other side. What are the inputs that go into this process? So in the pizza exercise, it was the toppings and the dough and the workers and the oven and the building. And then who supplies that stuff for the inputs? And these are potential people to invite to the event, and these are people to invite to the event. And then everybody who works in the process are people to invite. So it's just a way to kind of lay out and think about all the different stakeholders that might want to be involved. If you can get customers and suppliers in the event, that's great. Some people are a little scared to do that up front. And they say, I don't want to expose ourselves to that quite yet. I want to do a little self-improvement in our own backyard first before I start telling our customers what's broke. But often I find that the customer's like, I know what's broke. And just like you guys are saying with your suppliers, they're afraid that they're going to see what's going on, and you're like, I already know, and you guys have inefficient processes, so it's not going to be a surprise to me. So they're not shocked at what they're going to see. So I think that it creates a lot of value having them there. And I just added something like, sometimes when we're doing stuff with sustainability minded, we want to include somebody who can represent the environment, because there's no, can't invite Mother Nature to come into the event. So someone has to kind of represent them, a nonprofit or some organization that can represent different stakeholders. So that's a tool I've used to try to help make sure we have the right people invited. Then we gather data, so any issues and complaints we capture. We conduct interviews and focus groups, and just get to know people. So I spend a lot of time, especially I'm usually an outsider to that group, so I invest a lot of time in getting to know people, finding out what they do, listening, asking good questions. And some of the timings that I'll do, and actually do like cycle times and stuff, half the value is to get the numbers, but the other half is to build rapport and to get them comfortable with me being out and looking at the work being done. So that when I do bring up ideas or suggestions, they know that I actually do know their process a little bit. I'm definitely not an expert, but I have spent a significant amount of time with them. And I do know enough about the process to provide some useful insight. So there's a lot of value with that, more than just getting numbers. Pulling historical data as much as possible, if that's available. Checking inventory levels. So just kind of going through. So right now at Rebuilding Center, we're looking at the donations process, and we're starting to gather data on how many carts are not processed at the end of each day. And that's going to be a baseline for improvement to say, the goal is at the end of the day, everything gets processed through the donations area. And today, 6 carts were left full. And tomorrow there's going to be 4, and then the next day there'll be 8, and then one day there'll be 0. And we'll get a rough number that says 3 to 6 carts a night are not being processed. And then afterwards, hopefully, cut down to 0 to 1 carts. So we're just trying to get some idea of these inventory levels. And it's a lot of times it's manual, because we don't have the system to tell us exactly what is going on in that particular area. And then any scorecard and financial performance metrics that we can look at over a history. Usually I pull 12 months worth of records, because that gives me a full year cycle to kind of look at what's been going on. Has this been getting better and we're trying to keep it going, or has it been pretty steady at the same level and we want to make an improvement up or down, whichever way is better? So I want to at least know what my baseline looks like. So it's, again, typically 3 to 5 days, but we talked a lot about other options around that. The reason for the 3 to 5 days really is the momentum you're getting. Because you got everybody there, it's the same audience, you've got the commitment to it, and you're going to make a lot more progress than if it's broken up. But that's not always feasible. So then within the training we're going to do, or within the event, we're going to start off with some training, basic training, not super deep, because they're going to get more of the training as we go along. So even what I'm covering today in the workshop, that's too detailed for what I would do at an actual event. I'd probably give them the first, I'd probably play the video and do the overview of what value stream map is and then jump into it. Then we do a gimbal walk or go to the work area and observe what's happening. Because everybody might be coming in, this is the first time they've even been in this building or been to this area. So we want to expose them to the process. And walk everybody through so we all see the value stream physically walking it.
Do you have any tips on the best way to do that when so much of the work is in the computer system? That's one of the challenges I have when I try to do my gimbal walks.
Yep. So if it is heavy on the computer side, if it doesn't make sense to physically go to their workspace, because there is value to actually see where people work in the office and the work environment they're in and the noise level and the chaos going on. So that is important to physically go to where they work, but when they're showing their screen, it's hard to huddle around their cubicle or on their desk. So we'll come back to the conference room and have them pull it up on the screen and say, you just received an order, can you go to your email, pull it up and pretend like we're not here and walk through and show us what you do. And you'll see that what they explain isn't as simple as when they go through there. And you'll see the error messages pop up and you'll see the churning of the system going really slow. They're like, oh yeah, around this time the system just comes to a screeching halt and I gotta wait 5 minutes for that file to upload. And you start seeing those wastes that they forget about until they actually are going through that process.
So to have them kind of do a walkthrough on
a virtual walkthrough basically.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
That's great.
But I would like to try to get to their physical workspace and at least look at it as well. But that doesn't always work out. Then from there, we can now have enough information to piece together this current state map. And after we've completed the map, and usually people skip over a lot of the data stuff, but I really want people to try to fill in as much as they can about that. And so that's usually what takes longer, because you can put together a map fairly quickly, but when to put a complete map together takes quite a bit of time. And so that could take a full day if you do it right.
I mean, the data collection itself.
Like the data box filled out fully, where we need a yield number. Can someone run off and go get that yield number? Hey, we need an inventory. Can someone go back and check and count up how many boxes are there or how many patients are waiting in that right there right now? So to do that right, it actually does take a while. If I skip over a lot of that and just put the map up without the data boxes, I can do that much faster, but I'm missing a lot of information that's going to be helpful for the opportunities.
Well, it would occur to me that you would want to maybe do some of that data collection before you get to the training, right? Because to get a really clear average of what's happening at each level might require multiple points of data collection, multiple observations.
And like the lead times, I can't get unless I start that earlier because the system might not have when someone came in or when this order came through. And yeah, maybe I have that, but even like a little traveler card that someone, when you see this red card, mark the time, date and time when you process this, and then we'll do that. Send 20 of those cards through the system. See how long it actually takes to get through. So yeah, you definitely need to do that ahead of time. So I'll often do the training a month in advance of like a light training about the data boxes and what we're trying to do. Maybe a month in advance of that. Usually a couple of weeks is necessary. If you're within a week or two of the event, it really gets really rushed, and you might not have the time to gather all that information up. So yeah, that ideally you could bring all that to the table, but ultimately there's still stuff that gets kind of lost or left out, or someone's supposed to bring the data and didn't. And so go back to your desk and pull that report, and then bring that to us because we need that to fill it in here. So it's just being very diligent about trying to complete it as well as you can. And then from the map, then we can take a step back and say, okay, now based on what we saw, what we heard, where do we highlight those opportunities and what do we see on the map, the numbers and the problems that we're seeing. And let's highlight those and make them stand out on the map. Then we'll go through the ideal state and the future state map. So let me talk about that. So on the training side, it's really just an overview to get everyone on the same page. Some people have been through events before and they're like, this is old hat. some people, this is brand new, I've never heard of lean, I've never heard of value stream mapping. So there's something that can be done ahead of time. If there's only a few people who need some heavier training, that can be done offline too. So you have to assess the team that you've invited and find out what can we do ahead of the event itself. If everybody needs to be trained on it, then we save it for the event to do that. Because sometimes I've had last minute drop-ins that, oh, so-and-so is going to come and then they had something happen and I'm here now. Well, we trained anticipating the other person's going to be here, so at the beginning you still want to have some kind of overview training so at least they know what's going on. We try to do it more hands-on as we go. And then focus on the tools used in the event. So we're not going to get into a lot of other tools around lean if we don't anticipate we're going to need that. But if it comes up and says, you know what, actually as we walk through here, we really need some 5S work on this all these areas. So let me pull up some information about 5S real quick and talk about that. And let's see if that's maybe some events we should be doing in these areas. So I try to do it just in time like that. And anything that we can do in the training that has simulations or videos, that's better to get people to learn than just going through slide deck like this. So in the other workshop I do, we actually will do a little lean simulation of a before and after process and then try to improve the process to make it flow better. The Gemba walk idea concept is a really important one around lean, is to make sure you're going to the work area and doing seeing with your own eyes what's going on, not sitting in a conference room and making decisions about what happens. So that includes interacting with the people and showing respect to what they do. And they are the ones providing value. They're the most knowledgeable of the process. Yes, you can give them ideas for how the process works, but we have to be respectful that they're doing the really important work. And we're trying to understand what they do, not tell them that they're doing it wrong, or help them see the waste is really the way I like to approach it. So the current state is what's happening today. It's 80% of what's typically done, like I mentioned. It's based on the data gathering and interviews that we do during and prior to the event. We're just capturing the problems. We're not talking about the solutions quite yet. And we have to really understand the current state before we jump into the future state. And that's hard for people to do. They want to jump to solutions. And you have to pull people back and say, not yet. That's great, let me write it down, but we're still focused on understanding the current process. Because we're going to make the same mistakes if we don't understand what's going on, why things are the way they are today. So that's something you're going to have to fight against. And then use this kind of burst symbol on the maps to highlight the opportunities. And I'll show you some symbols at the end here. When we're going through the waste, we're identifying customer satisfaction, the 8 forms of waste I mentioned earlier, long lead times on the value stream map, like we showed, 5 days it sits there before someone processes it. Long cycle times, it takes 3 hours of labor to do that. Why does it take so long? Is all that value added? If that's a big part of the delay in the process. Where we see the most inventory or the bottlenecks in the process, even frustration areas that, yeah, I can do that work, but it's a pain and I hate it, and I batch my work because I don't like to deal with it because it's such a pain. So maybe that's something we can work on and make that simpler and easier for people to do. Overburden is another type of waste that you look for, where a process is overwhelmed and it's only a matter of time before it breaks. And that goes for people too. If you see a process where that person is always buried in work and they're always stressed out and they're always overloaded, they're going to break at some point. So that could be a problem, that this process is doing okay because this person is a superhero and they're making it work, but they're not going to last at that pace. So if you see those things, highlight those. That could be an area to focus on. How do we get a backup person for this person? How do we lower the amount of work going through that area? How do we offload some of their work so it's not all going through that? Or the instability of variation in the process, where you see high ups and downs and fluctuations in the demand, and how can we level out the demand, or level out the workload, or reduce the fluctuation in the quality of our suppliers, or the variation in the worker performances.
And a lot of times that's caused by batching, in my experience, because
Yep.
the one department I was telling you about that just was like one of the worst cases I've seen, there was a very efficient employee who'd been there forever, and so she had lots of things on her desk, one of which was processing enrollments. Well, she could seriously do 100 enrollments in a day, which is pretty amazing. So it'd get to like cutoff time, she'd do that, and then the next step was this was with the TPA, so the next step was it went to the insurer, and they would like hate us because suddenly it's like, here you go, because they couldn't do 100 a day.
Right.
And actually the funny thing was I actually supervised one of the payers as well as the TPA, and so yeah, they'd be like, stop it, stop that.
Yeah.
You know, so eventually we fixed that, but yeah, in her mind, she just didn't realize, she thought she was being super efficient.
Yeah.
But she was
And
just
she probably was.
overwhelming the rest of the system.
Right.
And in the meantime, that enrollment was just sitting there for 30 days, waiting till in her mind the priority. And again, people didn't care when the cutoff was. They wanted to know, like, did you get it? Have you processed it? So yeah, it was really amazing.
Yeah, like whether there's service level agreements or something, I gotta get this turned around in 3 days. People do that, they wait and say, what are all the ones that are due today? And let me do all those at 2.5 days when the 3 day turnaround is due. But the process gets stuck for 2.5 days for no reason.
Well, the crazy thing is actually people could apply 90 days before their effective date, and they would always take the ones closer to the effective date.
Yeah.
So if you were like, I'm like, you'll get the on-the-ball people are the ones who need to know that it happened, and they're the ones that are having to wait.
Yeah. And they're calling up,
And
where's
they're
mine at?
calling.
And they interrupt and they disrupt the process.
That's
'cause
exactly what was happening. It was horrible. Anyway, we did really streamline that. It was great.
So those are the things to look for in there for opportunities. I'm running out of time here, but can I take 5 or 10 more minutes? Just kind of finish through here.
I'm good. You
You guys
good?
good? Okay, thanks. We're almost done. So then ideal state would be, what if you were to set up the process from scratch, no boundaries, all the money, all the people you want, and set up a process that's defect-free, just in time, one piece at a time, minimal inventory, very low cost, all steps and work is value added, and very minimal space requirements too. So it's this perfect world, and again, it's to break people out of their current thinking. Well, we can't do that. The system won't let us do that. That's okay. We're going to put it up here. You'll be surprised how many things actually we can do and move towards ideal state once we've kind of got our mind around that. And then we come back to reality and say, what can we actually do with the future state? So you usually look about 6 to 12 months out as the goal. What can we do in the next 6 to 12 months? Limited budget, so what can we do with low cost? We don't want to say we need $1 million to buy this machine or do this upgrade to the system or use this software package or develop some new system. What can I do that's low budget that can implement very soon and test out if it's going to work? And know that you have limited resources, so what is the most effective things we can do to move us forward towards this ideal state? And we have current limitations, so what can we do to work around those limitations? That we can't change regulatory stuff. We're not going to influence the agency and let them stop sending this form in. But what can we do to make that work less hectic for us in the short term? And we have to comply with our procedures and policies as an organization. So you're going to have these limitations in there. But trying to find low cost, best bang for the buck opportunities. So this is how I like to do the discussion is current state map to ideal state discussion. It's not really a map, it's just more theoretical discussion. And then come back and say, now, not going from current state to future state, instead going from ideal state to future state. That helps break people out of this mindset too, that I can only tweak. When I do it this way, I seem to get much more aggressive and creative, innovative ways of getting to future state. That I'm just going to go in and lightly tweak the current state. It just doesn't get the results that way. Then we come up with an action plan, and we can use some voting. You saw in the video they use little stickers to highlight red dots where there are problem areas, and the stickers were kind of the votes. And you give people 3 to 7 different dots, and they get to place them where they think the biggest problems are at. And that's kind of the voting system that they use. called multi-voting, but it's not all or nothing. People get to spread out their votes a little bit, and that makes it a little easier to adopt. Okay, they didn't like my number one idea, but number 2 and number 3 areas got highlighted, so I'm okay with that. So it gets a little more buy-in when you do it that way. But you have to have an action plan that comes out of the event with name states and deliverables. So what constitutes that I completed that task? Because sometimes there's a lot of ambiguity in that. People think that I'm done, but it's like, no, you're not done yet. That procedure has to be released. It's not that you just wrote up a draft and emailed it out. That action needs to be all the way through to release of the new document. So stuff like that needs to be clarified in those action items. You can also use this impact ease matrix or some version of that, where you've got how easy is it to implement and how much impact will it have when we implement it. And ideally the stuff up here would be, in this upper right quadrant, would be very easy to implement and high value, high impact to the process. And down here would be hard or difficult to implement, maybe because of cost reasons or just complexity of what you're doing, and the impact would be very minimal. So it just allows you to kind of make sure you're working on the best valuable things you can do. This is the voting system where you kind of use the dots to help you vote on what the best solutions are or the best areas to focus on, or wherever you're getting stuck with the team, go to some kind of a multi-voting dot system that can help get people moving forward a little bit. It's not as super scientific, but it's getting people's ideas into something more quantifiable. And then having different action items about, most of you probably have some templates like that you can use, but the thing I was just highlighting is what is the end deliverable for that action? And for updating procedure, it has to be released. And emailing the photos means you have to actually send an email out to the team with the photos in it. Then you're done. Or setting up the Kaizen event is actually, it's not done until you actually have the report out. You can't just say, I scheduled it, I'm done. No, we want to see the results of the Kaizen event. That's when we're done with this action. So it's still open until that's done. So just having clarity about what done means is a best practices. And then a 30, 60, 90 day follow-up. So I would schedule those right away, so they're already in the calendar and you know they're coming up. And then I would have weekly check-ins on those actions to make sure that you don't get to 30 days and you're caught off guard, like, oh, I totally forgot about that. Let me start working on that now. I would want to know right away, first week afterwards, have a review meeting. You want to carry that momentum forward to the next week. And then consider these Kaizen event type of things, focused efforts on the improvement on some of those actions. Especially the more people that are involved in completing that action item, the more you want to make it more like an event, not just a meeting to get together. And that might require some more facilitation from somebody to help on that. And then track progress after the improvements. Did we actually get things done? And sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. As we start processing all the backlog, all of a sudden we start uncovering all the problems and exposing all that, but we're cleaning it out, but in the short term the metrics get worse. And then eventually we'll break through and the metrics will get better. So sometimes you'll see negative results right away. The other complaint I get sometimes is, well, before we started doing this lean stuff, we didn't have all these problems. Now we have all these issues showing up. It's like, well, you had those, they were there, you just didn't see them or you weren't exposing them. And lean is all about exposing problems. So all the tools of lean are set up to make the problem stand out and be obvious and painful so that you can go fix them. And if you don't like problems and you don't want to solve the problems, then lean's probably not the thing you want to do because it's only going to expose those things. So the problems were always there. We're just trying to bring them to the surface. And then have a refresher scheduled. Probably more on the 12 to 18 months is what I've seen in terms of having a refresher updated value stream map. And I would actually go back through and recreate it. Some people take the old one and update it, but you can use that as a reference, but I would actually go through the exercise of recreating each. You're going to have different people involved, and things are going to change, and you don't want to just assume that that's the same as it was. And actually, I would schedule it ahead of time, and then build in some prep time ahead of there too. And then that allows you to capture the benefits from the last event, what's actually gotten better. And then I mentioned that about you shouldn't be changing the current state. If the current state is the exact same as what it was before, then that's a bad sign. Then nothing got improved. And then the rest of this, and again, I'm going to send out these slides, is all the different symbols that go along with value stream mapping. And that's taken out of this book, Learning to See.
Oh, I need to read that one.
Here, I can look at it.
About that one.
Kind of glance through that. That's the best book out there for value stream mapping.
Yeah. I'll order it.
That's what these symbols are from. So to summarize, value stream mapping is a really good tool to get your teams aligned to the horizontal flow of your processes that the customer is more likely to experience, not just within your own department. And that allows us to see the flow inhibitors in the process. And I've seen where you can cut 50% or more out of the lead time just by going through the exercise and making improvements from that. Half the time it's just so obvious because people have just never looked at it in that angle, in that perspective. It takes a lot of effort, but it's very, very valuable. I don't know if it'd be the first thing I do right away, because there might be some easier things people could do in their own area first to get the momentum around lean, but soon, as quickly as I can, I'd like to get to the value stream map level so I know I'm working in the right areas and spending my effort and resources in the right area that actually is a constraint or a bottleneck for the whole process. So I then conduct the current, then ideal, then future state map. Again, the ideal is not really a map, it's more just theoretical discussion around what's going on. And the key is the follow-up. And it's not the facilitator's job to follow up, it's the process owner. So someone's responsible for making that value stream run smoothly, and they're the ones that need to make sure those actions are done. Sometimes as a facilitator, I kind of get dumped on as, well, you need to manage the actions. I'm like, I can help and I can remind you, but I can't make people do the actions. You're the one who's responsible for this value stream, so you have the authority to kind of drive people and work the priorities for people to make sure those things get done. And then there's a book, Learning to See, and there's another book called Value Stream Mapping from Karen Martin. That's pretty good, I've heard. I haven't actually read that one, but a lot of people have recommended that, so that's another one you can check out. And is there any questions